Okay, I think we have a number of the applicants here. If you'd like me to start, I can go ahead and read the item into the record.
Okay, yeah, we'll just welcome everyone back to the afternoon session of our July 14th public hearing, public meeting. We have 6 items this afternoon that are all applications for work on designated properties. And I will turn it over to Corey Harala, the Director of Preservation, to begin that agenda. Go ahead, Corey.
Thanks, Sarah, and good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start today's Preservation Department public hearing agenda with item number 1, LPC 20-10148, an application for a binding report in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 73, Lot 2, 84 South Street in the South Street Seaport Historic District. This is a portion of a waterfront esplanade built on landfill at a former wharf. The application is to construct an open-air restaurant/bar structure and install planters, railings, decking, lighting, and signage.
And commissioners, the applicants have joined the meeting. Applicants, if you could just state your name for the record and you may begin.
Good afternoon. I am Anthony McCary, and I'm the New York City Parks Department's Director of Concession Architecture and Development. We are here today to present a design for an outdoor cafe at John Street on the East River Esplanade within the South Street Seaport Historic District. This parks concession was competitively bid through a request for proposal process and will be developed and operated under the terms of a 10-year license agreement with the South Street Seaport Limited Partnership, which is a subsidiary of Howard Hughes Corp. They are represented here today by Israel Katz and George D'Aquinto. The concession is obligated to fully fund and manage the design and construction of the project. And it is important to note that unlike most parks concessions whose license fees go into the general fund, the license fees paid here will all go back into the surrounding parkland, with 50% of proceeds going to improvements of the Imagination Playground and the other 50% going towards general maintenance and operations for the East River Esplanade. This project is a priority of parks to create a new amenity for the community that increases public access and provides a venue to fully enjoy the surrounding historic seaport in a comfortable, casual setting, while also creating vital new economic activity at a critical time in our city's history. Parks appreciates the fact the concessionaire remains committed to this project despite the current challenges facing the restaurant community. The design we are presenting today is for a structure that is fully demountable, but is being proposed to remain year-round for the entirety of the 10-year term. It is located just north of the existing service building, which houses maintenance and operation space, the grab-and-go portion of the concession, as well as public restrooms, which will be maintained by the concessionaire. Woods Baguette are the architects of record, and they are represented here today by David Brown, who I will now turn this over to make the design presentation. Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Brown. I'm a design principal at Woods Baguette in New York, and I'm really happy to be here and be presenting this project to you. Do I control? Okay, great. So the site location is on the East River along the promenade under the FDR overpass. You can see here indicated by the red dot. So zooming in, as I mentioned, it's under the FDR overpass. It's right at the end where John Street kind of terminates into the Esplanade and overlooking the East River. This is kind of another indication of the site plan where you see the site location here. You can start to see the columns of the FDR overpass, the termination of John Street. You can see Pier 16 and Pier 17, and Fulton Street and Beekman Street. And this is South Street running north-south. So as Tony mentioned, the license fees are allocated to go to both the maintenance of the Esplanade, but also to the Imagination Playground, which is located adjacent to the site, just west of South Street. Here you can see an overlay of the landmarks district. So we are here within the landmarks within a landmark district, indicated here as well. So this project is also helping to achieve the East River Waterfront Master Plan objective of creating a vibrant edge to generate year-round activity and provide new amenities for residents, workers, and visitors. You can see here the kind of existing condition at the time of the East River Waterfront Master Plan, and you can see here their proposal to actually have different kinds of pavilions, activate that area underneath the FDR, and create a really active edge and bring more activity of the streetscape out to the waterfront. And it was mentioned that the district was historically used for maritime use, and you can see this kind of all the kind of bustle and activity and stuff that was happening along the waterfront back in its heyday. And what we're trying to do is sort of bring a new type of commercial activity to the area that will help, with part of the regeneration of the waterfront. Here you can see some views of the context and part of the South Street Seaport District, and some of the things that we're really inspired by, obviously the natural setting and the overlook of the East River, the kind of expanse that you get at the waterfront, the wood decking that you see, and the historic piers, and also the materiality of the brick and masonry that you see in the historic buildings along the water's edge. Here are some views. So this first view is from John Street, looking out to the site. You see the Brooklyn skyline in the background. The kind of historic ships and stuff that dot the waterfront, and some of the new landscaping elements that have been coming in. So we're also kind of looking at the kind of new condition and responding to the context as it's evolving over time. This is a view looking from the south part of our site, looking north. You can see the kind of new painted underpass of the FDR, which brings a lot of kind of vibrancy and just sort of helps ameliorate the fact of being underneath the overpass. Some additional views from the north side. You can see the restrooms on the south side that were mentioned before. And so, we will be removing some of the furniture and creating a deck that will cover the paving. But as mentioned, this will all be replaced in kind at the end of the tenure of the lease. So this is a panoramic view that looks from the Imagination Playground out to the waterfront. Our site is to the right here, so we are preserving views from the Imagination Playground to the waterfront. Here you can see an overlay of the overall kind of scale of the forthcoming kiosk. And this is a view from John Street, showing how we've really positioned the building, to the north to really open up both the views of the waterfront, but also to allow pedestrian connection from the pedestrian crossing to kind of have seamless flow out to the waterfront. And that the type of structure that we're designing, you'll see is a very open air structure where you can see through it. It's very kind of light and delicate and doesn't really create any additional blockage of the waterfront views from the city. So here's a plan of the bar. You can see the outline, the extent of the kind of new deck that we're providing. You can see the columns here that illustrate the scale of the actual kind of vertical structure that's being introduced. You can see how we're positioning it such a way as, again, to kind of preserve that sort of walking path from the street crossing out to the waterfront. Here's a kind of more detailed view of the plan. So this will be an open deck without cover. And here where you see the black squares, that represents the columns, and you see the bar itself. So the bar is designed to seat 100 people, and they'll be serving pizza and beverages. The pizzas will be cooked with 3 electric ventless pizza ovens. As mentioned, the structure will be temporary, and all paving and furniture will be replaced in kind at the end of the installation. The overall area of the bar is 2,700 square feet, including the deck and seating, and the kind of enclosed area of the bar alone is 1,500 square feet. This is a plan indicating how we'll be winterizing it by providing some kind of protection at the base and at the top. So it'll be kind of a clear plastic vinyl that'll surround the whole thing, and they'll be adding a kind of red vinyl skirting at the base to help protect from wind and be able to heat the space in the winter. So it'll be a year-round structure. So in terms of the designing the structure, we really looked to the context for inspiration for the materiality. We were really inspired by the nearby ships and the mast and the kind of wires and cables and stuff that are part of the sails. The existing kind of product design of the waterfront, obviously the wood decking mentioned earlier, the red brick and masonry context. Also the new kind of esplanade benches, the concrete materiality that's being introduced is also for durability. And then also, elements like the FDR underpass and Pier 15, where they're using a pop of color to really help kind of make a kind of undercroft condition more vibrant and more active, and especially at night, giving the opportunity to kind of give a pop of color to help kind of attract people and make people feel kind of welcome to these spaces. So this is the material palette that we selected. So the bar itself will have a kind of mesh bar, will have a metal mesh cladding and shelving that kind of relates to the kind of lighting and product design of the waterfront. The wood decking that you'll see for the deck itself, and also for the structure of the bar. We're using terracotta tiles on the bar itself to kind of help relate to that masonry context. Precast concrete planters, and then the red awning and vinyl that will help kind of create that pop of color. And then the handrail that we're using to kind of demarcate the deck will have a kind of cable net similar to this that will help reference the ships. So here you see a view of the bar in context. You can see here again, sort of keeping that flow from the crosswalk coming through the deck space here with the cable net guardrail, and then the open views through the structure that really kind of keep that sight lines open out to the waterfront. Since our last meeting with the community board, we have adjusted the location of the planters to provide kind of a larger landing space when people are walking over from the north side of John Street. So we have made some adjustments there. You can just see kind of also the choice of light fixtures and stuff is really just kind of play up this kind of festival atmosphere of the waterfront. So this will be it, the bar in the winter. So again, we are kind of enclosing it with a clear plastic vinyl or a clear vinyl in order to be able to winterize it, protect from the wind, and providing a red skirting at the base. I think it also, like with the wood and the red, it kind of brings a sense of warmth and vitality to this undercroft condition as well. So here you can see a view of the bar from the esplanade itself, where you see Pier 15 on the left and the kind of open esplanade and the bar structure on the right. So again, kind of complementing the material palette that exists there with this kind of additional warmth of the timber and the kind of festival atmosphere that we're trying to create and make this a really kind of great destination both during the day and also at night. And that's the winter condition where you can see the additional vinyl and the red skirting. This is a view kind of from the bar itself, looking east out towards the waterfront. You can see the terracotta, then kind of coloration of the bar that we were trying to reference the brick and masonry context. And the same view in the winter, where we're still trying to preserve as much of the view as possible. So these red here is also to kind of help with the wind load that's happening on the vinyl at during the winter. So that's it. So recap, the proposal is for a 100-seat outdoor food and beverage kiosk, which will operate year-round. It is a temporary structure. It will last for 10 years, after which it will be returned to, the esplanade will be returned to its current state. The design is contextual, visually permeable, and the cost is $650,000. That's it from our presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have any questions at this time? If you have a question, please raise your hand and I'll recognize you. Okay, not seeing any hands raised. Let's turn to public testimony, and we'll turn over to our Executive Director, Lisa Krasavage, to see if anyone's signed in to speak. If there's anyone in the meeting who would like to speak, they should raise their hand now so that we can recognize you. Okay, Lisa.
Okay, we did have 4 people sign up to speak, and there was, I couldn't see any of the names of people that signed up on the list. So I'm just going to go through people with their hands raised. So we'll start with Michael Kramer, and that Michael will be followed by Joanne Gorman. So Michael, I've promoted you to a panelist. You just need to accept that and then unmute yourself. Let's see, I'm not seeing him. Michael Gorman. Okay, I'm not sure exactly what happened to him, but let's move on to Joanne. Oh, here's Joanne Gorman. Okay, Joanne, I've promoted you to a panelist. If you could unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
There we go.
Yeah,
Yeah, please just state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, I'm Joanne Gorman, and I'm a member of the Seaport Coalition and co-founder of Friends of South Street Seaport. And I'm here to speak against the blockhouse proposal. The standards we use for the use of our public spaces should be of the highest caliber, and they should always favor as much public use as possible. Use that will pull a piece of the public space out of the public realm under the guise of being available to all, but really focused on a select audience. If, for example, you have the money to pay for the offerings, doesn't belong here. When an historic area is added to considerations that must be taken into account for a proposed development, additional care must be taken regarding what the historic district is meant to protect. The blockhouse proposal before you will take up not only public space, but will also compromise, if not completely eliminate, an important view to a key maritime component of the South Street Seaport Historic District, its historic ships along the waterfront. It simply does not belong in this place. We've heard the presenter mention open air and temporary. We already have an example of an ill-conceived space, a supposedly temporary open air garden bar that has slowly morphed into an enclosed rectangle smack in the middle of our public Fulton Plaza in the special historic seaport, and which blatantly advertises as private space. For those not familiar, I'm referring to the Howard Hughes partner Chase Sapphire Lounge. Here's a quote from their website for a space that's occupying public property. Quote, enjoy this Sapphire signature cocktail, premium food, and an exclusive bar and private lawn seating here on our public property. There's a basic problem with turning over the use of public space to private initiatives. Without any real oversight, a sense of entitlement sets in, and the broader unknowing public just accepts a new status quo regarding whom the space actually belongs to. For all of the above, I ask you to reject the blockhouse proposal before you and to make sure others don't come forward again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll have Stacy Shub, who did sign up. Whoops. Sorry. Okay, there we go. So Stacy, you just need to unmute yourself and please state your name for the record. You can turn on your video if you choose.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Stacy Shub. As a 25-year resident of Southbridge Towers, I cherish the remaining public view corridors that allow pedestrians to see the water and ships when entering the South Street Seaport Historic District. This proposed location, which would take advantage of those views for paying customers, would do so at the expense of public. Mayor Bloomberg, the Seaport Working Group, amongst many others, have stressed the importance of protecting and preserving all east-west view corridors. Additionally, if you were to turn onto the Esplanade to piggyback on what Joanne just said, not only have they taken over the space on the cobblestones, but if you turn onto the Esplanade now, the recreated tin building that Howard Hughes built almost totally obscures the public views of the Brooklyn Bridge if you are south of Pier 17. Additionally, the proximity of this location at this intersection would also impede the foot traffic flow on the sidewalk and create a potentially dangerous situation for the parents with children, the tourists who cross here heading to and from the pier, especially when Howard Hughes concerts spill 3,000 visitors onto the streets into an already congested area. Please, let's not lose more public views, and please reject this proposal for the Blockhouse Restaurant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Jonathan Boulware, followed by Caroline Miller. Okay, Jonathan, you just need to mute yourself and turn on your camera if you choose. And please state your name for the record.
Okay, it looks like I'm live. Can you hear me?
Yes, please
Okay.
just state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Jonathan Bulware. I'm president of South Street Seaport Museum. Chair Carroll, commissioners, staff of LPC, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm going to really, I think first I want to recognize some of the work that's gone into this, and that Parks, you've got clearly some objectives that relate to revenue, and I certainly know as well as anyone the importance of revenue to support operations, and I'm sensitive to the city addressing that in this way. I certainly respect the work that Woods Bagot has done, and yet, and with apologies to my neighbors and partners, Howard Hughes, I think there are some persistent issues with respect to this particular design and this particular location. Some of these have been stated already. I'm really going to confine mine to the issue of circulation and view corridor, and I think that I guess I want to say I think some of the underlying principles of what's being done here I agree with. I think the concept of activation is right. I think the concept of revenue makes sense. But I think this particular location in the physical size that has been designed does actually interrupt in key ways the view corridors from east to west. And even some of the renderings that were presented show that despite the isinglass transparency, we find that the views to our now smaller and very kind of concisely located fleet of historic ships will be interrupted. It is probably known to some folks on this call, but that the museum has very specific aspirations for a building on what has long been vacant, the John Street lot, and were that ever to come to pass, and certainly I hope it does, the objective there is to reconnect the edge of the seaport with its waterfront. And so my concern with this would be that would actually create a barrier to doing so. So I think, in broad concept, I think the idea of putting something here is sound. I think the concept of doing it for revenue generating purposes and as part of a revitalized esplanade, as Mr. Macari from Parks articulated, can possibly be done. I think this one is flawed in the sense that it really violates that view corridor that has been held dear. And as a, just as a matter of kind of historical precedent, it's a view that the city has prioritized historically citywide, but particularly in the South Street Seaport Historic District. So again, I thank you for the opportunity to speak on this matter. I am not going to make a specific request of the commissioners, nor am I going to urge a particular position, merely that you take into account the importance of these view corridors and what it means to the activation of the Seaport District in total. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Caroline Miller. Caroline Miller. Okay, you just need to unmute yourself and turn on your camera if you choose.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Caroline Miller. I live at 275 Water Street, so I'm very, very familiar with the Esplanade and with the specific site where the blockhouse is proposed. I'm also a member of Save Our Seaport and the Seaport Coalition. I'm testifying because I'm very concerned with protecting the integrity of the historic district and with ensuring that development in that district prioritizes public benefit of this public asset and not just commercial interests. It seems to me that from a historical preservation point of view, the blockhouse site is the worst possible place on the Esplanade that you could locate a new bar and restaurant. It obstructs the most important view from the John Street area towards the waiver tree and the W.O. Decker and any other visiting ships that are there. It's also, I can testify, the most densely trafficked part of the whole Esplanade. People who, there's a lot of bike traffic and runners and people walking, lots of families coming across from the playground, people coming down Fulton Street to the edge tend to cut right across where the blockhouse would be located. and continue south. And I think this is important, not only because this is like where the uplands meets the waterfront, but because other than, protecting the historic district, I think the thing families are most concerned about in this area is open space, and open space that's not commercial and that you don't have to pay to play. And I think that this is not a good place to do this. I'm sure you're all aware that the Howard Hughes Corporation on Pier 17 has commercialized every inch of it. And if you have forgotten that, you are reminded constantly by video signage, big commercial video all over the building and on the pier. On the pier itself. I just don't think we need any more of this in that particular area. So I hope you will vote not to obstruct the view corridor and not to locate another restaurant and bar in that particular area, sacrificing the open space and the public access to that spectacular view. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next we have David Sheldon. So David Sheldon will be followed by Michael Kramer. So David, you just need to unmute yourself and turn on your camera if you choose.
Okay, you can hear me now.
Yes, please state your name for the record and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, David Sheldon, good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to testify today. I am a New Yorker, a sailor, a member of Save Our Seaport, and the South Street Seaport has been my second home now for 20 years. So I ask that you take a walk down Fulton Street to the East River. This is the way and the view that's been celebrated by Walt Whitman and by Herman Melville. Walk to the waterfront that is still an oasis sought by New Yorkers and by visitors alike. The first thing you will see is a bar, not a saloon housed in a building, which would be appropriate to any waterfront, not even sidewalk tables. This is a bar built in the middle of Fulton Street, right in front of Skirmahorn Row. Maybe you can see past that bar, but then at the end of the bar is the big screen video. Maybe you can see past that to the Cadillac dealership offering test drives at the foot of Pier 17. Welcome to the waterfront in the South Street Seaport Historic District. Now we have a proposal for another freestanding concession, another bar by the same developer, this one obstructing the view at the end of John Street. Here we would otherwise be approaching the majestic vessel Wavertree, as well as the other vessels of the South Street Seaport Museum. And I want to note that the depictions offered today, that the vinyl enclosures of this bar are mysteriously invisible, and that the diagonal view is not nearly as obstructive in some pictures as it is in others. And in fact, rather than the orthogonal, the diagonal would be obstructive. The cherished ability to walk into another era of our city is again being lost, once again to a proposal that would sacrifice all we have sought to preserve here. Our advance to the waterfront and the views of the river and its ships would be marred for the sake of ready profit. The New York Street of ships sacrificed for a high-priced strip mall. I respectfully ask that the commission reject the proposal today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the final person with a hand up is Michael Kramer. Michael, I'm bringing you in as a panelist. And you just need to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
There we go. Yes, we can. Please state your name for the record and you have 3 minutes.
All right, my name is Michael Kramer, and I'm testifying on behalf of the Seaport Coalition. This blockhouse bar is aptly named. As viewed from John Street or from the East River waterfront, our east-west visual corridor is blocked in whole or in part. The Wavertree sailing ship and the W.O. Decker tugboat and Skirmahorn Row, which are all on the National Register of Historic Places from the west and from the east respectively, are blocked. The South Street Seaport Museum Work Barge and Maritime Operations Center is similarly blocked. A local mother writes that aside from egregious obstructions to the water, this structure will greatly increase the already crowded, confusing, and dangerous public space under the FDR. Did anyone notice the exit entrance from the bar is into the bike path and right where there's extremely short lines of sight? Families flock to this area for the award-winning public imagination playground and will access the park from the path where this bar is proposed. This project will steal more of what little open space exists in the South Street Seaport Historic District, put pedestrians in harm's way, and overtax the public bathroom that already has waiting lines 10 people long on summer days. The Seaport Coalition supports Manhattan Community Board 1's unanimous rejection 4 times of this proposal. The buildings and context of the South Street Seaport have precedence over what is proposed to exist, just as the public's demands have precedence over the profit-making ambitions of the latest leaseholder. It's important to remember that most of the South Street Seaport Historic District, including the buildings and the views in question, are not private property. They're owned by the City of New York, and its citizens have the right to help determine their future. Thank you very much. Please oppose this project.
Okay, thank you. I don't see anybody else with their hand raised.
Okay, thank you. And Rich, do we have any written comments that were submitted or written testimony?
We just have the Community Board 1 resolution that recommended denial of the application.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'd like to now turn to the applicants to ask if they'd like to respond to the comments that were made in the public testimony. And while we have no jurisdiction over use, it may, if you have some comment on that, that's fine. You may be able to address that. There were some comments about congestion and circulation, which is, again, not under our purview, but to the extent that the size and location affect, or it's been said that the size and location affect the connectivity of the district to the waterfront and the character of the district, it would be helpful if you'd respond to those comments.
A couple of points. The public access portion of the comments. This is a parks concession. It's operated under a license agreement. As part of that license agreement, the seating is not exclusive to customers of the establishment. It is open seating for the public. They're not allowed to deny somebody from sitting down with their own sandwich, their own drinks in these seats. So it really is, again, it's different than maybe some of the other operations that aren't controlled by parks. So this is operated under the license term. We do, as we mentioned, the funds from this are going towards the maintenance of the park and the improvements at Imagination Playground, but also there was a mention of the public restrooms. The concessionaire will take over, if they're allowed to move forward, will take over operations of the restrooms and the maintenance of those restrooms. So that'll be fully staffed by them rather than city resources, with the hope that this is a model we follow in many other concession agreements that we have, and it's been quite successful where their staff is responsible for the restrooms and things like that. Again, the public, the view corridor, I think we've taken, exceptional steps to keep that corridor, preserve the views and frame them. And it's important to note, again, this is a public seating area. We feel this is a way to take advantage of those views, that the public can come, sit down under the canopy, have a cool drink or have a slice of pizza and enjoy those views. So we see this as an enhancement of an appreciation of the view and not a blocking of the view for the public. So that's an important part of this. As David wants to elaborate, but as far as public, the crowding, we've taken care to again, keep those crosswalks clear. There's entry points to the bar on multiple sides. It's not just one entry point. You can approach it from all sides. So to help with the congestion, as you noted, we did respond to the community board comments about congestion as you're crossing from John Street. And he set the planters back, created another entry point for the bar area that people can just walk through the area. So we've taken care to look at the congestion and the points of access and potential congestion.
Okay, thank you. And I want to just turn to our commissioners now. I do want to note for the record that Commissioner Devonshire is recused from this item. He has not been present for the presentation and will remain out of the remainder of this discussion. And I see that Commissioner Goldblum has a question, so I'd like to recognize you now.
Thank you. A couple of questions. I think that the comments have certainly focused on the issue of view corridor and blocking it. If you could go to page 25 of 40, that's kind of the one I've been looking at, and it might be good to see it for everybody. If you could do that. It's one of the rendered views. First question, the height of the ceiling. Is there a reason why it's that high? Because obviously, you know, the height of the ceiling affects the view. Yes, it's sheet 25 should be one of the, it's a close-up view. There it is. Oh, no. All right, keep on going. It's the third set of renderings. I'm just going to try to see if I can see what page it is. I mean, my PDF says 25 of 40. So yeah, that's it. Okay, good. So the height of the ceiling, the spacing of the columns, were these at all set for a particular reason? In terms of, you know, obviously those two decisions of the height of the ceiling affects how much of the view is obstructed, and the insertion of that inner row of columns right behind the bar is another impediment to the view. Talk about those a little bit, and just I want to come back to another couple of things.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the column spacing is really dictated by this, you know, the structural span of the wood members that we're using, and you know what the requirements are for that. So that's what's dictating that. And you know, I think the height of the bar was, you know, really a kind of balance between trying to create a kind of intimate space and something that, you know, doesn't have the kind of cavernous quality of the FDR, but it kind of brings it down to kind of human scale, but also kind of maintaining those views. So it's, you know, I think you can see here that we are, you know, it's, you know, a little bit more than twice as tall as the average person. So it kind of like really opens up that view line as you're looking through it, rather than if it was lower, you'd block more of the view. So I think those are really what governed, you know, kind of the height.
And the structure of the ceiling is a wood structure?
That's correct.
And two other questions. Did you explore any other material besides vinyl for the winter cladding? Because vinyl does, I mean, your rendering is, I would say, very optimistic in terms of the visual impact that the vinyl would have. And last question would be what is the duration of the contract?
So to start with the last one, the duration of the contract is for 10 years. And the vinyl, I think, is, you know, one, it's very easy to kind of move, you know, to basically move with the seasons. You know, it's much lighter weight than glass, for example. I mean, glass would actually be potentially even more opaque in terms of you know, the reflectivity and stuff of the glass. The vinyl has kind of lower reflectivity, but in terms of operations, it's just much easier to remove the vinyl at the end of winter and put it back on, and to store it, you can roll it up and store it in a tighter space than if they were. It's also much more lightweight, so it'd be easier for, you know, for one or two people to kind of go in and do that. So that's, you know, I think in terms of transparency, you know, I believe it's on par with other kind of transparent materials in terms of reflectivity, which is really what is going to create the view blocking that you're talking about. I think we're helped by the fact that it's actually in shade, and glass in shade or any kind of reflective material in shade tends to be more transparent than it would be if it was actually exposed directly to natural daylight.
Thank you.
I can't hear you.
Thank you. I was muted. Okay, we're going to start next with
I had
Commissioner
a
Jeff.
question. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I was actually doing it in the order in
Oh,
which
so
things
sorry.
went up. That's okay. So Commissioner Jefferson, followed by Commissioner Chapin, and then Commissioner Shamir Baran.
I have an issue with the corridor, and I'm trying to understand the design intent of the corridor. So if you go back to your site plan on Jones Street and the location of the kiosk in relationship, could you go back to that plan? So the question I have is whether the location of if you're standing in the middle on axis of Jones Street, 2 blocks down, 1 block, what would you see from 2 blocks away, 1 block away? If you moved up closer, what would you see? The issue for me is the location of the bar itself. Could it be shifted over more, where it's blocked by the building, the existing building, perhaps opening up the corridor more instead of, it seems to me that the structure is aligning the edge with the sidewalk. So if I'm walking on the sidewalk on the north side, I would be seeing the bar and it would be blocking the vessels. Am I reading that right? Or do you have, am I correct in assuming that if you could shift it more, you would have a more open corridor?
So we've actually moved the bar as far north as we can. It's in terms of where the services are and where additional, existing structure and other kind of conflicts would be. So we have moved it as far north as we can. We've shifted the bar itself, which is this, I think, out of the view corridor. So you would be looking at a framed view. If the farther back you are, the more easily it will be to kind of obviously look through the open part out to the waterfront. But we did, try to actually move the bar itself, which would be the most sort of opaque element in the design out of the view corridor of the sidewalk. But in terms of like the placement location, it's kind of optimized based on the existing site conditions and the kind of other elements that are existing in the underpass.
So are you telling me that if I'm walking on the north side, in the middle of the sidewalk, the bar would be blocking my view, no?
No, you'd be looking kind of just past the bar. But the bar is also, lower. I mean, it's not at your eye level, right? So you would be able to see over the bar as well. But you'd be looking kind of through this row of columns here.
Important to note, we have shifted the location and we have rotated it. At one point, it was rotated 90 degrees. So we heard the comments and we're very sensitive to the view from down John Street. So we tried to move it north. There is a practical issue. You need to be somewhat close to the service building for this to work. But the further north we get, then you're running into issues of the view from the playground, which we were sensitive to. And we think the more critical views of the ships would further be affected if it was moved north. So this was kind of the sweet spot that we thought, looking at all the alternatives.
Thank you.
Chapin, followed by Commissioner Shamir Baran.
Yeah, my first question was really about the location and whether other locations had been explored, since that is obviously a main issue. And it sounds like there could have been some other locations except for the service issues. I guess the other question is whether the roof of this could be more transparent. Not talking about the side so much, but the roof, which Commissioner Goldblum was discussing, which is if you had a more transparent roof, perhaps that might help with the view situation. And I agree with Commissioner Goldblum as well, but we're not into comments, so I'll just ask that question. That's it.
Okay, so the question is, had you considered a different roof material that might be more transparent? And do you think that would have an effect on the open quality of the design?
Am I muted? So I believe the roof, we really thought that having the more solid roof would just help with the feeling of being underneath the overpass and creating something that has kind of a sense of enclosure to it along the waterfront. I mean, we concerned about potential for things that could drop from the overpass down, and as kind of vibration of cars going by and stuff like that. And so we wanted to avoid that. I mean, whether or not we could, I think once you put a transparent roof, it just becomes a kind of maintenance concern also, that you have to kind of work harder to keep it clean, and could get very kind of dusty and dingy up there. I don't think it would have much of an impact on the actual view corridor. But I don't believe we've explored it. Yeah.
All right, Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Yes, my question has to do with our own definition of temporary. I don't have any sense that what's being presented is temporary, other than the fact that the applicant is telling us that in 10 years it'll go away. I don't understand how 10 years is temporary. In my mind, temporary has something to do with the any moment and constant potential dismantling and movement of a structure. The way in which it acts like, a piece of furniture, an awning, a sign, some things like that are not, that don't have duration about them, but are actually things that can be undone in the real time. So I want to hear about your thoughts, Sarah, and other commissioners, about how we interpret temporary and whether or not this fulfills that objective.
Well, we've done it at staff level and we do it at commission level. And at staff level, the definition of temporary for the purposes of getting a permit for temporary installation at staff level is that the installation be up for a period not exceeding 1 year. So that's the time period or the duration that we use to enable the staff to write permits for temporary installations. And in addition to the duration, the permit also requires that they submit the plan and time schedule and any specifications for repair work that are necessary upon removal, so that there's also usually an escrow agreement established to ensure the removal at the end of that permit. For things that are to be up for longer than a 1 year period, but are intended to be removed at some point, those are types of installations that come before the full commission. And so recently we actually saw an art mural, art sign, art banner, let's say on the Jewish Museum, and that was handled as a temporary installation because it had a specific time period, and the approval set the standards for its removal at that time. So I think it's, the idea is that the approval itself has the mechanism to enforce the removal at the end of such period. In this case, we could talk about whether we establish such a mechanism in any approval we make. And then the other way that we've thought about the word temporary is sort of more of a kind of as a design type, or sort of like an ephemeral design, or a reversible design, or something that reads as furniture even though it may be installed. And so we've used it that way, but for the purposes of a plan and time schedule and enforcing the removal, we would establish that in any approval, whether it's staff level or commission level. Mark or Corey, do you want to add to anything I've said on that?
I would just add that the commission did review and approve, for example, a different type of temporary installation, which is the type on Pier 17's roof. And it's temporary in a sense that there's a defined period of months or duration of months that a certain type of structure is allowed for, and then that's taken down. And then for the winter season, for example, the ice skating is up on the roof. In the summer, it's a concert installation. So that's a different way of being temporary, and it comes up and comes down. I don't know that it had an end date in mind, but it did sort of obligate the owner to, to do those things within the periods of times that were established.
Okay. All right, any other questions, commissioners? All right, not seeing any other hands raised. I think we'll move to our discussion. So Commissioner Bland, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Holford Smith, would you second that?
Second.
Okay. And we'll have a vote on closing the hearing. All in favor of closing the hearing, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed and we'll move to our discussion. So I think Commissioner Schimmer-Barron, your question, I think is a good way to kind of set up the discussion here. So this is a proposal for a installation that the applicants have said would be up for a period of 10 years. And we can discuss, the idea of that is temporary, and if something that is there for a duration is acceptable to the commission, then we can talk about what kind of mechanism we can put into any approval. But then the other side of that is, I think, talking about the kind of quality of the design, the lightweight nature, opacity versus transparency, whether it's ephemeral, whether it's reversible. So those are the kinds of things that we also often talk about when we think about installations that may be next to historic fabric, or in the case of the seaport, where we thought about installations that may obscure view corridors that connect the historic district to the water. So Commissioner Schimmer-Barron, would you like to actually start on that one, or do you want to think
Sure.
about that a little bit more? Okay.
No, I'm happy to start. And I really appreciate your clarification about how we define temporary. So that makes it clear to me that in terms of duration, actually about that subject, it would be interesting to hear from others whether or not it matters, if it's 1 year or longer. I am more concerned about the sort of the architectural features that are used here, and whether or not they, connote a kind of an impermanent structure. And I think that this doesn't quite succeed. While I'm absolutely in favor of having kind of more outdoor things, and even if they are kind of in the public domain, clearly at this moment, and not to dwell on use, that seems to make sense. But I think that that there are aspects of this that need to come apart on a regular basis, and that the thing needs to read more like furniture, more that it needs to roll away or be stackable, or something that can be dismantled on a more regular basis. And then additionally, I think this is aside from the question of whether it's temporary or not. There is something, I think, about the local roof, the roof to the structure, that seems strange to me. I mean, I think what's really interesting here is that it's underneath the infrastructure, and the idea that the infrastructure itself does not suffice as kind of like a roof structure means that they haven't somehow. There's something not quite resolved, I think, about the relationship between this object or piece of furniture and its larger kind of meta roof, and that maybe that also contributes to the fact that it looks like strangely small scale, or attempting not to be too imposing, and yet is there kind of in a much more seemingly permanent way, because it has its own roof and it has its own immovable columns. Thanks.
Okay, great, thank you. Commissioner Gustafson?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Schimmer-Barron entirely. And I would just focus a little more on the way the roof structure actually interferes with the view corridor. For me, and I may be alone in this, that the view of the ships is to me, the singular one most important view, and in that area. And maybe it's my personal heritage, but so that's the first thing I noticed, and I can't get over it, which is to say, from notwithstanding the showing us angles where it doesn't matter, there are lots of angles where it does. And so without columns and a roof, I'm happy. I'm not sure that's can be done. So with columns and a roof, I don't see it.
Okay. Commissioner Jefferson.
I agree with my fellow commissioners, but I do have a way that I could accept this. If the way it affects the view corridor is an object placed in the view corridor. So I'm seeing an object. If it was 3 times as tall, if I saw a screen that I could see through, I would feel more comfortable. I mean, the roof, if the columns went up all the way to the highway, or it would be almost like a classical Greek monument where the columns, you see through the column. I would accept that. But the way it is now, it's blocking too much of the corridor for me, and the ship is a dominant thing that I want to see when I walk down that corridor. I want to be able to see the ship in its entirety. So that's
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Lutfi.
So I happen to agree with my fellow commissioners. Everyone's been making great points. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Everyone's been making really thoughtful points that I agree with. And I'm just going to raise a few things. One of the things that we really all liked about the concert series pavilion that we approved for Howard Hughes was not only does it come down after the season, which I would advocate that this gets dismantled in some way after the outdoor season, but it's very the structure is very skeletal almost and webby and lightweight. And I would think that if we were going to put something here, we would want to do something like that. I also do have this feeling that the roof to this exists already, and it is the highway. And if we're concerned about stuff falling from the bottom of the highway, I think that maybe something should be, connected to the bottom of the highway temporarily so that the covering is, so that we don't have to worry about stuff falling and the view corridor stays open. And then maybe we don't even need any of these columns. I mean, that's just a whole nother kind of look at it. Part of me, I think I appreciate the fact that, this is we want to have more open space opportunity. Part of me doesn't really love like putting something here anyway, because I feel like historically this has been open and should remain open. But I also feel that if we could actually make it as open as possible, I wouldn't have a problem with it. And we have to re-examine the structure so that it opens up more. And maybe we get rid of the top if it works.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Bland.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for reminding us that many aspects of this application, particularly many that I find most objectionable, actually are not really germane and a little bit out of our purview, particularly use. So I'll try to stay away from that. But I am struck by the similarity of this pavilion and the one that we finally did approve that I had a lot of problems with on the, I guess it's called the Old Fulton Pier on the Brooklyn side, almost under the Brooklyn Bridge, which again was about blocking views and taking away from the public realm, public space. So many of those attributes that I was against over there on that side of the river, I'm still finding to be a problem on this side of the river with this application. I think this is in the wrong location. I'm less accommodating than some of my fellow commissioners who seem to be trying to figure out a way of making this work. I'm very dubious that, from my point of view, that it can work. It certainly can't work in this location. It would have to move and be in the shadow of a building. The applicant has said that there's no utility or something, I've forgotten now, that can't move further north to be in the visual shadow of buildings. It cannot be blocking the open space like this. I also support the idea that this should be truly temporary. 10 years is not temporary. And that it should look much more temporary. It should be a pop-up. It goes away in the cold weather and it comes back in the warm weather. If that's what the city thinks. I can't imagine, frankly, being under that space in January, sipping a Mai Tai, but maybe that's my problem. In any event, those are some of my objections. I won't go into the architecture. I think it's been said. I don't think it looks temporary enough. The isinglass is certainly not invisible at all. It's we've all been to these places in other climates, and it's a visual barrier. So I think this is a highly problematic application from my point of view.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, thank you, Carol. All the fellow commissioners have been making excellent points and comments today, including those of the testimony including those of the public testimony and the Seaport Museum director. Being a son of a ship captain that died at sea, the seaport, the essence of a seaport is its maritime history. And to me, I agree with the commissioners that made the comment that the view of the ship should be the predominant. And the route on the way from John Street onto the seaport should be, the ship should remain the focal point. And I think that in this case, the structure, as many commissioners have mentioned, detracts from that dominant theme, and also is you know, the way that it's constructed, I agree with many of the comments that the roof and the scale and the proportion is troublesome. So I will leave it at that, not to repeat many of the comments.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Goldblum.
Hey, I agree with much of what everyone said. I especially thank Fred for bringing up the Fulton Street proposal that I think is incredibly similar to this. I think that, I mean, the way I look at it is it's a visible addition in a place that is not where we would normally historically expect to see a building in this district. Therefore, I think the applicant has to approach it like any applicant would when proposing a very visible addition, and really analyze the views in a much more systematic way. Clearly, the focus here has been on the views. So I think that when the applicant comes back, or if the applicant comes back, that the analysis be one that is much more typical of other very visible incursions into a district. where we really look at the impact on the visibility of the project relative to the other historic elements of the site. I think it would also be useful for the applicant to look a little bit more closely at how this part of Fulton Street of the district was used in the past. They showed an image of a bustling waterfront, but were there structures here? Were there, that might help guide the applicant in crafting an image. I mean, I think that I want to say that amidst all the very, I think, appropriate criticism, the object that they have designed is an attractive object. I think it's, but I think in listening to the applicant's responses to the questions, it sounds to me like the decision process by which a lot of the decisions were made were internal to the project. How can we make this project nice for itself, for the users, for the program? And those are all totally valid ways of going about it, but they didn't kind of look at it from our point of view, which is its impact on the district. So that goes to the height of the ceiling, the spacing of the columns, the choice of the cladding materials. Clearly, if the thing can be relocated, that's better. But I think without understanding the visual impacts in a much more systematic way, I can't make a judgment as to how much it's actually occluding the view. So I would want to see, obviously, when they come back, if they do with a scheme that is more transparent or that defers more to the historic view corridors that everyone's talking about, but it should be done in a way that is systematic, that is thorough. There's great precedent for how we do that. The last thing I wanted to note is the choice of wood flooring, wood decking in this particular location, I think is a little bit curious. One of the features of this district and of kind of waterfronts in general is when you cross that barrier from asphalt, concrete to wood, you're in you're on the water. You're literally on the water. And by bringing that inboard into a place that is definitely not on the water, I think it's a curious displacement of that texture. I know they want to make a relationship with the wood decking, but I'm not sure that's the right way to do it. I think this is a place that is of the street, not of the boardwalk.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Chapin?
Yes. First, it is not temporary. And the structure might be quite reasonable somewhere else, but at this location, it really is significantly affecting views, which are, and it really affects our basic sense of the historic district, unfortunately. I agree with other commissioners' comments, and I think one of the most important things is, yes, why do you have a roof on this structure when it's under the highway? Well, the answer was because something might drop on you. And indeed it might. And I assume that the concessionaire is concerned because they would feel liable or could be accused of being liable if someone were there at the precise moment that happened, since it could happen at any time. And obviously there's a risk to the public if that's true, for people just walking around. So having some kind of a screen either attached to the highway, which is done in many places, and could be perhaps negotiated with the city or state, but in terms of or else having some kind of a screen top to this that could even be higher could be possible, but you wouldn't need, you basically wouldn't need the structure, just the area that was in some way roped off even. You could have a much lighter approach to this whole project and still have an active concession here and have the ability to dine out and see what, and everyone could see the view, not just the patrons who might be more enclosed. Because truthfully, I think it's pretty obvious you could have a pretty open structural design here that could be utilized as an active concession. And I just can't approve it as presented as a consequence of what other people and testimony and my own views are on this.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Holford Smith.
Well, I think probably everything's been said about this application. So I just want to repeat a couple of things that I feel strongly about, which is, again, maintaining that view corridor down John Street and not having this structure block the view. And the roof, which is, I think, makes it the most, blocks most of the view. Again, if they could eliminate that altogether and just have an open air pavilion that was seasonal, I think that would be much more appropriate. Something just like we did approve at the Fulton Ferry Landing.
Okay, thanks. And Commissioner Bland, did you want to add something?
You're on mute.
Yeah, you just
There.
have to accept.
Thank you. Sorry for a quick new thought. At Grand Central Terminal, the Campbell Bar has a seasonal bar that they put out and take out. It's under, as you know, the roadway above in the old taxi lane. It seems to work pretty fabulously as a pop-up seasonal bar. And I just suggest to the applicant that maybe really simpler is better here. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so, yeah, I think that's good. Okay, so we won't take an action today. I want to thank everyone for commenting and thank you for the presentation and commissioners for your thoughtful comments. And I think the applicants should continue to work with the staff to think about what this should look like and how it should relate to the historic district, or at least not obscure connectivity here. And so think about the height and placement of the columns in the roof and the need for them, if they're even needed at all. And then, so I think there were some comments about materiality, and then also think about the location, and with those revisions, present to us how the new revised design might fit within this context, both looking to the water, but then also looking back from the water at the historic buildings. So we won't take an action today. We'll ask you to continue to talk to the staff and work on responding to our comments, and we'll have you back as soon as you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move to item number 2. This is LPC 20-07723, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 502, Lot 16, 160 Prince Street in the Sullivan Thompson Historic District, a Renaissance Revival style tenement building designed by Bernstein and Bernstein and built in 1904. The application is to enlarge masonry openings and install new storefront infill.
The applicant has joined the hearing. Sir, if you could just state your name for the record and you may begin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
So my name is Stefano Morisi, principal of the OO Architecture Office. And this is a very simple project. It's 160 Prince Street, and it's the removal of existing windows. And let me see if I can control.
So you just need to click the screen.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. So the project regards the storefront on Thompson Street and Prince Street, which now is a restaurant. And it regards the enlargement of these already operable windows just by making them taller and lowering the sills, the brick sills, about 24 inches from the ground. Now, we're in the Sullivan Thompson district, and the building in question is a 6-story Renaissance revival style new law tenement, and it was built in 1904 with red brick and terracotta details. Now, the the tax photos here, 1940, 1980. In 1940, we see a storefront facing Prince and Thompson that has very large windows, and the entrance has remained as today. And the same large windows are also display windows are also on the Thompson Street. In 1980, these large windows have been replaced by multi-light windows, and it was in the past it was a bar. Today, this is still the same. Sorry. So today is still the same configuration of these windows. These windows are operable, and the color has changed to look more like the original, and the entrance is still in the same position. Our scope is to, as you can see here, these are the elevations, photo elevations of Prince Street and Thompson Street. So our scope is to enlarge the windows, the 4 windows on Prince Street on the left of the entry, and the 2 windows on Thompson Street on the right of the entry. The idea, since the restaurant has been closed, of course, for COVID, the idea is to the project is just to make create a much more connection between exterior and interior, and then to allow the business to start again when it can reopen inside. These are examples of storefronts, some historical, some not. Almost all of the restaurants have operable windows down to the ground. We're not creating French doors like these restaurants. We're only lowering the sills. And also our building houses 160 Prince Street. Sorry, the Vesuvio Bakery, which is part of 160 Prince Street. These elevations, we can see the existing building and the existing storefront. The relationship of also the new storefront with the existing building above. Let me go through. So at the end, it's a very simple project. We're removing these multi-light windows. We're lowering the sills to leave a 2-foot bulkhead, brick bulkhead at the bottom, which was suggested by the community board. The windows become in 2-panel or 3-panel maximum, and the same idea is done also on same concept is on Thompson Street. The color of the frame, which is a steel frame window, to keep we wanted to keep the lights, the sight lines the minimum possible, is a Benjamin Moore, and it's a brownish, greenish color. These are the windows on Thompson Street, same concept. And the idea is to just, as I said, keep the width of the window and just lower the sill down to 24 from the ground. These are renderings of photo montage of what it would look like on Prince Street, and on the bottom you can see Thompson Street. So we have 2 windows on Thompson Street and 4 windows on Prince. The other windows pertaining to the restaurant, which are the kitchen and other spaces, are not being modified. This is a close-up on Prince Street, where you see the windows in the bulkhead, and this is a close-up on Thompson Street. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, not seeing any hands raised. We'll turn to public testimony. And Lisa, you can let us know if anyone signed up to speak, and any member of the public who's in the meeting and wishes to speak on this item should raise their hand now so we can identify you. Okay, Lisa?
Yes, nobody signed up to speak and I don't see any hands raised.
All right. Rich, do we have any written testimony? Oops, Rich? All right. I don't know if Rich is there.
Sorry, I'm here. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have a resolution from the community board recommending denial.
Okay, thanks. All right. So I'd like to turn back to the applicant to maybe speak to some of the issues that came up at the community board.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to talk about some of the concerns they had and how you
Yes.
responded? Okay.
Yeah, sorry. So I think the main thing from the community board, first of all, was because we had a project that had a metal bulkhead. So they suggested a brick bulkhead that would be much more, it would integrate much more with the building. So that's what we followed. The other thing, the main thing was that in the liquor license, they had something that said that we couldn't have French doors, but that's not what we are proposing. We're proposing operable windows as they are now, and in the past, I believe also the multi-light windows have part of it were operable. And I think we're just proposing something that is more similar to what was the existing in the 1940. And with large windows, we're not, of course, replicating. We cannot replicate what was there before, but we're trying to make it more similar to that. And mainly, this is it's really a way of getting this restaurant back in business. Because the windows that were there before were for a bar. They don't allow a connection between exterior and interior. And so we believe this is the best situation, the best solution that can accommodate both things for the restaurant to have more space, and for the a more sight to an open air to the exterior, and to do something that is according to us, very it's a very small project that I think it goes well with the building as it is now.
Okay, thank you. All right, and commissioners, if we don't have any final questions, then I think we should move to close the hearing. And I'm starting to unmute you all so we can do that vote. And Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
Motion to close the hearing.
And Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
I second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed and we can begin our discussion. And as was presented, this is a building with multiple storefront openings that has been altered over time. And the proposal is to enlarge the openings, to open up these openings that have been reduced in size. And while maybe not going back to the original size, it certainly is an incremental improvement. And I think the larger display windows are more in keeping with the kind of dynamic ground floor storefront spaces that we expect to see in this commercial district. So with that, do others have comments about the design or materiality of this or the operable nature? I think we can, maybe I'll start with Commissioner Holford Smith.
Well, I find this to be appropriate. Most storefronts in this district would have had a lower bulkhead than what exists currently. And I think maintaining the same detail that they have now is appropriate, not trying to introduce new materials. So I can find this appropriate as is.
Okay, great. And Commissioner Goldblum,
Agreed.
Commissioner Chapin,
I agree.
agree. And Commissioner Devonshire,
I agree also. I've always thought that those smaller windows are sort of odd in this neighborhood, so I think it's a reasonable request.
okay, great. Commissioner Chen
Same here.
and Commissioner Bland,
I'm in, it's appropriate.
okay. Commissioner Lutfi,
Me too.
okay.
I agree.
All right, and Commissioner Jefferson
It's appropriate.
and Commissioner Gustafson
Yep, appropriate.
and Commissioner Shamir Baron.
I agree.
Okay, so I think we have a consensus to approve. And I do think that this is, an incremental improvement that will really help this building relate better to the streetscape. So Commissioner Holford Smith, would you make that motion? Would you read that motion?
Sure.
Okay.
In the matter of LPC 20-07723, 160 Prince Street in the Sullivan-Thompson Historic District. A Renaissance Revival style tenement building designed by Bernstein and Bernstein and built in 1904. The application is to enlarge masonry openings and install new storefront infill. I note that the building's style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Sullivan-Thompson Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that this portion of the building's commercial base has been significantly altered over time with brick infill and smaller display windows. Therefore, the removal of the existing modern storefront infill will not eliminate any significant architectural features. That enlarging the display windows will bring the window openings closer to their historic size and will be harmonious with the proportions of historic storefronts that remain at other portions of the building. That the configuration of the proposed storefront infill feature an operable paired and tripartite steel casement windows with simple profiles, a neutral finish, and thin framing will bring more transparency to the commercial base and is consistent with the commercial character of the streetscape. And that the work will be in keeping with the special architectural and historic character of the Sullivan-Thompson Historic District.
All right, and Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
I said,
Okay. All right, Rich, will you call the vote?
Yes, Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Baron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, 11 in favor and none opposed. The motion carries.
Good luck, and we'll move to the next item.
Next item is number 3, LPC 20-09535, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 720, Lot 7502, 468 West 23rd Street in the Chelsea Historic District Extension. An Italianate-style row house built in 1857 and later altered. The application is to install a through-wall louver.
And Commissioners, the applicant has joined the hearing. Please state your name for the record and you may begin.
Edith, you have the wrong presentation slide up. You may need to swap that out.
Sorry, apologies for that. So,
468 West 23rd Street. It's the third tab.
oh, that's next. I see. Apologies.
And the applicant is now entering the webinar and should be able to speak momentarily.
Just one moment. Apologies for that.
Margot, if you're here, you can control the slides by clicking on the cover slide and then state your name for the record and you may begin.
Great, thank you. My name is Margot Otten. I'm a registered architect and principal at Oso Architecture. and I'm going to be presenting a project at 468 West 23rd Street, apartment 2F, for a through-wall AC grill. The site is located close to the corner of 23rd Street and 10th Avenue. This black hatched area right here shows the location of apartment 2F. It's in the front of the building. It has one exterior wall, which is on 23rd Street. The side walls and rear wall are shared with stairs and with a neighboring building. The red rectangle here shows the two windows of apartment 2F, and the photos on the right show the existing large and unattractive window AC unit that protrudes from the building and is typically left in year-round. This is the floor plan of the apartment. It shows the main living areas on this floor as you enter on the second floor, and the lofted area over here with the bedroom and the bathroom, which are high up on a mezzanine. The current window AC unit, although it's a new and a very strong unit, it can't sufficiently cool the bedroom up on the mezzanine level. And so as part of the renovation, we're planning to replace this window unit with a split system. Split system ACs consist of two components. The air handlers, which would be located in the bedroom and the living room, and they're piped to a condensing unit, which would need to be located either in an outdoor space or in a exterior wall. The building is a condominium, and there are no outdoor spaces where the condo allows condensing units. The rear yard and rooftops are all privately owned, and the front yard is a shared space, which the condo has not approved tenant use of shared spaces. So these are the elevations showing the existing window unit and our new proposed location for the through-wall grill, which is a 3 foot wide and 1 foot 7 inch high above the right window on the second floor. This view shows the existing window unit and the proposed grill above the window. The proposed grill will be flush with the wall and painted to match the brownstone finish. These are technical details showing the condensing unit location above the window and the louver specification. These are historical photos of the building. The photo on the left shows the original identical row houses on this block with the original windows and stoops. The photo on the right shows that by 1940, the stoop was removed and the facade was significantly altered to remove the window detailing and add a fire escape. The 1981 photo shows the facade was further altered with a medieval style pub at the ground floor. And here on the right is the current facade. They've added the stoop back in and some brownstone detailing around the windows. But my point here is that none of the current facade details are original, nor do they match exactly what was there originally. These elevations show a few other options that we considered for the louver. We consider locating them above the windows with a more decorative trim surrounding the window and the louver. This option wasn't in keeping with the typical window head height of the original row houses, and so we ruled it out. We also considered locating the grill below the window. Unfortunately, we're 5 inches short of having enough vertical space between the floor and the windowsill to fit the condensing unit. So in order to locate a grill below the window, we would need to demolish the windows and the sills and install a new raised sill, new custom windows, and new brownstone surrounds, which would not only be cost prohibitive for such a small renovation project, but they would also reduce the light and air, which is already at the minimum building code requirement for the interior floor area. So this is why we landed on the option of locating the window louver above the window. Furthermore, that option would be easily reversible in the future if it were to be removed, and it could be seamlessly patched back to the current condition. It is conceivable that in the distant future, a small condensing unit that is small enough to fit below the window might be manufactured and could be located under the window, or there may be a change to the condo rules about locating units elsewhere, in which case this through wall louver could easily be removed and the masonry and brownstone could be patched to the original condition. These are a few images of other wall grills at neighboring buildings. These are not the same look as what we're proposing, but we wanted to show that there are several examples of wall grills on this block. So to summarize, we're proposing a grill that will be completely flush and level with the facade and painted to match the brownstone so as to blend in and disappear as much as possible. This will be a change that's easily reversible and would be a significant aesthetic improvement over the existing large white window unit that sticks out from the building. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? All right, not seeing any hands raised. I just had one quick question. And forgive me if you already said this at the beginning, but they currently are using a removable window unit.
That's correct.
And is there a functional need to change that type of unit to something more permanent?
Yes, so because the bedroom is lofted up on a mezzanine and it's far back in the apartment, the window unit, which is down closer to the floor, by the nature of being a window unit, the cool air does not actually reach back and up to the bedroom level. And so it's not a sufficient cooling for the bedroom area.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. So why don't we turn to public testimony and see if we have anyone here to speak. Lisa?
There is someone, a commissioner raised their hand, sir.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Jefferson, please go ahead.
Just help me out. In this type of district, is that type of cutout unit acceptable in the past?
You mean from the commission's regulatory history?
Yeah, yes.
So, you know, the commission has historically discouraged through the wall units on the front facade of row houses. So the rules do not allow the staff to approve these types of installations, which is why they come before the commission. And in some instances, the commission has found them to be appropriate. I can think of one recently where it was a flats or former flats or tenement building that had fire escapes. And we approved the installation of through the wall units beneath windows that were at the fire escape. And on the basis that those louvers would be partially obscured from view by those fire escapes. So, you know, depending on the circumstances, the commission has found it appropriate, but generally discourages it where possible. Okay. All right, so now let's turn to testimony. Lisa?
Okay, we had one person sign up, and that's Kelly Carroll. Kelly, I just brought you into the room.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, there we go. My button was stuck. This is Kelly Carroll for Historic Districts Council. While unsightly and not able to be regulated by the LPC, the Historic Districts Council favors window air conditioning units over through wall units any day. Removing a unit from a window is reversible. Cutting a cavity through a brownstone facade from 1857 is not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's it for the testimony.
Okay, and Rich, do we have any written testimony?
Yes, we have the resolution from the community board recommending denial of the application.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now I'd like to turn back to the applicant and see if you'd like to respond to any of these comments.
Sure, I could respond to that comment. Removing a through wall louver is reversible. You would simply need to remove the unit, infill the masonry, and refinish the brownstone on the facade, and it could be restored to the original condition.
Okay, and I think you said that the facade has been resurfaced, so
It has been
material
resurfaced.
that is there is actually not, the surface material is a stucco or cementitious mix.
Correct. Mhm.
Okay. All right, other final questions, commissioners? Okay, so it's not seeing any other questions. I think we'll move to close the hearing on this item. Commissioner Holford Smith, would you make that motion?
So moved.
And Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay. All right, all in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Devonshire, would you like to start this one?
Not knowing what the BTU capacity is for the existing air conditioner, the first thing I would suggest is we find out if there could be a more powerful unit placed in the window. I'm against putting a hole through the wall in this building.
Commissioner Chen?
I am ambivalent on this one. Obviously, we do not want to, but I understand from the architect's explanation that it's difficult to get the air. So if it can be restored, and depending on how the other commissioners feel, I may be able to support it.
Okay. Commissioner Bland?
It's a real conundrum here, as it has been for the commission in just about 55 years of its history. I remember a time in the early, maybe in the 70s, when this was the way to go. And then all of a sudden it wasn't the way to go at all. So it's a slippery slope, I think, if we allow it here. There are hundreds of these examples that I think we would be opening ourselves up to. But it is a conundrum.
Go ahead.
I'm sympathetic with the with the plight of the owner here. I'm not enough of a mechanical engineer to suggest anything. I understand the only windows in this apartment face this way. There's no back that they can use, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a difficult problem, but I can't support opening up a new sleeve.
Okay. Commissioner Lutfi?
I mean, I agree. I think it's difficult. And I guess I don't feel like these options in and of themselves work. So the one that was recommended, the one that was discussed, that the applicant said doesn't work, but that is visually the least difficult to digest, is alternate option 3, even though it's, it would be creating an opening in the facade of the building, but it's much more discreet than every other option that was recommended, and it doesn't change the size of the windows. So
Well, it does actually change the size.
Sorry, excuse me, the hearing is closed, so the commission will have their discussion, but you can certainly talk with the staff about the issues afterwards, okay?
okay, maybe it does. And I was supposed to hear that, but I feel like there must be another way to, another successful way to deal with this. And it might need some more investigation.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Jefferson?
I agree with my fellow commissioners. The air conditioning unit, they have powerful units that blow the air into the space that could accommodate the technical issue of cooling. So I think I would rather have that solution, a unit in the window and making a hole in the wall. These facades are so fragile that once you start to do that, it becomes something else.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Gustafson.
I think I made the cheese may be standing alone here. Unlike Commissioner Bland, I don't actually remember the 1970s. So I have to start with, and with all due respect to Historic Districts Council, I understand that in through window, when you go through the window, the air conditioning unit it's reversible, but that's not the same as saying that it will ever be reversed, which is to say that air conditioner, that huge unit, and it may even be bigger today, who knows, if to cover the needed BTUs, it's never going to be removed. It's always going to sit there. It's always going to be more noticeable than the through wall unit. And here, the through wall, the surface that we're breaking has actually already been resurfaced. And so if you're talking about whether it could be restored someday, and again, I don't think it ever will be. I think, what we choose to do here is going to be done forever. The sad thing is that if that medieval pub was still there, nobody would even notice this thing.
Well, in a way, it is sort of interesting that, in these buildings that are altered during their time, either, from going from single family use to multiple dwelling, and then having commercial spaces put into them, some of these kinds of intrusions, I think, are sort of emblematic of that evolution of use in these buildings, which is kind of interesting to think about. Okay, Commissioner Shamir Baran.
Yes, I'm opposed to puncturing the surface of any of the walls. And I guess I don't understand. I think I have maybe 4 of the portable kind of units where you can have a panel in the window and the tube comes into a unit that you're looking at inside your apartment. You don't like it every single day, but that's, you get to have it in your home. And the only thing that's visible on the outside is a circle through a flat panel and a 4.5 inch to 5 inch dimension underneath the window. So I don't know. So I'm saying I'm opposed to the proposal as it's being
okay. Commissioner Holford Smith.
I agree with my fellow commissioners. I can't approve penetrating the wall, especially in this highly visible location. So I think they need to look for another solution or just keep the unit in the window.
Okay, and Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, I agree with the majority of the other commissioners. We have approved louvers in other situations on large buildings, but if you were to do this in general, every time you had a true wall air conditioner on smaller buildings, you would have an awful lot of louvers penetrating buildings. And we do have, this is going to create a situation where there's other buildings in the row that have louvers in other positions, and there's no kind of consistency, which I also find troubling. So I think the thing that can be reversed conceivably in the future really is the in-window air conditioner. I'm in a brick building. We have to have, we have window air conditioners. And I do also have one in one of the rooms, which is portable that Commissioner Barron was speaking about. So I just think, air conditioning will continue to change over time. And I think at least we shouldn't have penetration of the building in this case, I think. Thanks.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I think, we have a couple of people who may be open to it, but clearly the consensus is to not support this application and to not support a cut in the wall. So I think that we can go ahead and deny this application based on the number of people who are opposed. But then I would encourage the applicant to think about, other options for a reversible window unit, or even in the future thinking about maybe something, a split system where there can be a unit in the areaway, or work with the condo board on other alternatives. And perhaps our action today may help you in those conversations with the condo board. So Commissioner Devonshire, can I ask you to make that motion?
in the matter of 468 West 23rd Street in the Chelsea Historic District Extension, an application to install a through wall louver. I recommend denial, finding that the facade details of this row house have largely been restored to their original design, and this building does not have any existing through wall units. Therefore, the work will interrupt the uniform appearance of the facade. That the installation of a through wall unit above the window in the middle of the spandrel is not in keeping with other through wall units installed below windows at other buildings in this row. And the work will detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building and the streetscape.
All right, and Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, and Rich, will you call the vote?
Yes. Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Nay.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Did I miss anybody?
Me. Oh, shoot. Yes.
Sorry, Commissioner Lutfi. You're muted.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, with 10 in favor and 1 opposed, the motion carries.
All right, so I'd encourage you to continue to work with the staff to think about alternatives. Okay, and we'll move to the next item.
Okay, the next item is number 4, LPC 20-10880, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 720, Lot 7502. Scratch that. I think I just started reading the wrong one. Let me start over. Item 4, LPC 20-10880, application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1009, Lot 50, 140 West 57th Street, the 140 West 57th Street Studio Building, individual landmark. A neo-Renaissance style studio building designed by Pollard and Steinem and built in 1907-08. The application is to alter the courtyard and rear facades, install balconies, create at-grade barrier-free access, and replace doors.
Applicants have joined the hearing, and state your name for the record, and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Bill Higgins of Higgins Quaysbarth, and we are the historic preservation consultants for this project. And if I can figure out how to move us forward, I will do so.
So Bill, you just click on the screen and then you can, there you go.
There we go. Okay. So this is a proposal for alterations to an individual landmark at 140 West 57th Street. It's a 14-story building, visible existing condition photograph of the 57th Street facade on the right. And it's located on the south side of 57th Street between 7th and 6th and 7th Avenues as seen on the left. Oops, excuse me. These historic photos from circa 1910 show original conditions. The building was built as a studio building completed in 1909 by architects Pollard and Steinem. And it is the right hand or east side of a west side of a pair of two buildings virtually identical, characterized by matching bold cornices and also by many floors of projecting oriel type studio windows with two-story spaces behind them. Just for sort of historical interest, this is the original condition. And if you look at the base of the building, those studio windows continue down to the base of the building, separate entrances for the two buildings, and then an areaway at the base. That changed in the 1920s, as shown on the left in the 1940 tax photo. You have to look a little bit carefully. You can see that the two cornices are both in place, and that what has happened at the bases is that those studio windows on both buildings have been removed and replaced with larger commercial windows. The view on the right is from the 1990s, I believe, and it shows that by this time, this is 140 is the building on the right. That's the one we're talking about. By this time, the cornice had been removed. We have records that show it had been removed by 1982, but we don't know exactly when it was removed. But I think pretty clearly it is showing a very distinct loss to the building to be without its cornice. Here, just a very general summary of the 57th Street proposal. On the left is the existing condition, and on the right is a photo montage of the proposed condition. Much of what we are proposing for this building, the majority of it, in fact, is approvable at staff level, according to staff. But just to give you a basic idea of what this project is and how much restoration or generally restorative work it includes, you can see that we are proposing to put back the cornice. We have precise evidence for what it was in the matching one that survives next door. It was a metal cornice originally, and we will be replacing it with metal. Again, that is a staff level approval, as is the repair and the painting of the windows, repainting of the windows to bring them more into line with the somewhat darker color or tonality that shows up in the historic photographs. What comes to the commission is the main entry of the building, which is that arched opening at the center of the facade, and we'll take a closer look at that in a second. Existing and proposed elevations, which basically describe the same story that I described previously. This is a good place to mention, however, that the existing use of the building is commercial. It started out as residential studios, but since about 2002, it has been offices, and that is what it will continue to be. Just incidentally interesting, office spaces with double height spaces, which are the original studio volumes behind those double windows. Also, this is a good place to say that we are not proposing, although we're proposing some changes toward the top of the building in the rear, as you will see. Nothing we are proposing is visible from the street in any significant way, and none of it increases the overall volume or height of the building. So let's concentrate now on the major element before you for this facade. And looking at the existing condition of the main entry, you can see there's a shallow ramp that provides barrier-free access up a single step. That ramp was installed in 2000, I believe. And as you'll see, there are Herculite doors behind it installed at the same time. We are proposing to remove that ramp and to replace the Herculite doors with new doors that are based on evidence of the doors from 130, which you will see. They will be wood doors. They'll be slightly taller than the original doors to allow at-grade access, and a wood transom above. And here is a photo montage of what we are proposing. So at this point, the ramp is gone. The doors are in, a pair of wood doors with a wood framed glazed transom above, and you'll see more detail of that. Just the historical evidence. On the left, is a photograph from the 1970s showing the surviving original door, not in this building, but in its twin at 130 next door to the east. And you can see it's a pair of wood doors. They have two square-shaped wood panels below a glazed vertical panel above. Just for sort of curiosity, the one in the middle is a 1970s photograph of 140. This is a 1920s installation that I mentioned to you in the historic photos that that the base of the buildings both changed in the 1920s. Part of that had to do with a street widening. So our proposal, as you'll see, is to match as closely as possible what were the original doors rather than the 1920s one. And to the right is a somewhat close-up view of the 2000s Herculite doors that are in the opening now. Existing and proposed side by side, I think they're self-explanatory. Just very quickly, this does show another of the staff level approved interventions, which is removing the non-original metal plaques that flank the entry arch and doing new bronze plaques on the flat faces of the pilasters. But again, that's a staff level approval. I think the main image here is of what we are proposing for the doors and the transom. And some details of the existing Herculite doors with a plan and elevation section of the ramp, which we'll be removing. And this also shows where the Herculite doors were placed, sort of just behind the paneled and ornamented soffit of the arch. This shows the new doors, and it also shows on the right that we are proposing to place them also back behind the ornamental a wood arch infill in what we think is their original depth. So we can't call this a restoration. Obviously, that's why we're before you, but we do think it's an extremely good way to achieve barrier-free access and coming just about as close to a restoration as it's possible to get. So that finishes what we're proposing for the 57th Street facade. We'll move now to the second and final piece, which is our proposals. Oops, sorry, just further details showing the same treatment I described. So this portion shows what we are proposing for the side and rear portions of the building. Everything that we're proposing here is, well, I won't say it's 100% not visible. You'll see the degree to which it is visible, but it is all side and rear unornamented parts of the building. And again, most of what we are proposing, i.e. changes to windows, is approvable at staff level. So it's a limited area that we are asking you to look at. On the left is the existing condition of a typical floor, and I hope you can see where I'm pointing. That is a light well, air shaft light well, which we are proposing to infill. It is tucked way deep into the building and is not visible from any public way. Next to it, where I'm also pointing, are fire escapes, and we are proposing to change those fire escapes. Hold on, I'm sorry. My particular view has is blocking part of this. Okay, so what we are proposing on the right, floor plan showing the infill of that light well on the east, and also putting in new balconies, not exactly where the fire escapes are, but in sort of an analogous location. Oops. Don't know what's happening here. There we go. So these are existing photographs to show what the rear looks like. Common brick wall planes pierced by very simple windows. And you can see, I think, on the lower right, the locations where this is shown. The center and right photographs show the fire escapes that we're proposing to remove, and the light well we're proposing to infill is invisible sort of behind those fire escapes. A rendering of the elevation that we are proposing. Again, everything from the top of the building, where everything from where I'm showing here with a hand down is being approved at staff level, with the exception of the balconies, which are shown here. And then at the 13th and 14th floors here, we are proposing changes, which I will show you in detail. So these are obviously renderings of what we are proposing. That's that side elevation, with those new balconies. These windows are new. This is where we would be proposing to push forward that light well, and elevations and sections showing the same thing. Just two renderings. Obviously, these are interior, but just to show you why we are proposing that light well removal. This is the effect that the light well has on the interior space. And if we remove it, we open up that space quite considerably and create that new window there. So it's something that we think is very worthwhile and affects a part of the building that we believe is appropriate to alter. So here are existing and proposed rear elevations, which get us to the final part of what we are proposing. This is the 13th and 14th floor, where I'm pointing on the left. And what we are proposing to do is to move some bulk from the 14th floor down to the 13th floor, as you'll see in a second. And that in part causes us to be proposing new elevations at the 13th and 14th floors, which are commission level reviews. So this maybe explains it a little bit better. Here is an elevation from the east. So there's the 13th and there's the 14th floor in existing condition. We are proposing to take this bulk on the 14th floor and move it down to the 13th floor. So there's frankly more usable space on the 13th floor, slightly held back from the original rear elevation plane, and then approachable through a door as a little rooftop terrace for the 14th floor. That's that same set of conditions visible from the other side, from the west looking east. So here in plan, this is the 13th floor, where we would be proposing to move that bulk down from the 14th floor to create this larger interior space. And then this is the 14th floor, where with the removal of that bulk, we then create a situation where we were able to do a new elevation here, with a door leading out to a terrace. Just photographs of the existing condition. That's the 13th floor. That's the 14th floor. And as you can see, it's a quite shallow pair of interior spaces there. So here, making it really obvious, there's the 14th floor existing, that comes off and moves down to there. You can see that it is set back behind the parapet of the top floor of the original elevation, so that there's a subtle distinction in plane between the two. So this part of the rear elevation is what you are specifically looking at. 13th and 14th floors. these new proposed brick and window elevation conditions. And just to be really kind of fussy, this is a view from across 56th Street from the south, and right here, this little area is where you can see the top 3 floors of the existing condition. And what we are proposing will change this to this, which is virtually indistinguishable. In fact, what we are proposing is actually, I don't know, a foot or 2 shorter than what's there now. And every place, yeah. So materials on the facade, we're really proposing a paint on the painted surfaces, the cornice, the windows, and the new doors. We're proposing statuary bronze for kick plates and hardware of the doors. And wherever we are doing brick on the rear, we are keeping the existing brick or reusing it where we're changing the sizes of openings or using new common brick to match. So that is really the entirety of the project. We think that it's going to provide a nice continuing use for the building. And again, although this is interior, the reason for the name of the project is because it's going to keep these interior double height spaces where they have existed all along as studio spaces. So it'll be not only nice office space, but very much in keeping with the exterior character of the building, with a much restored and much better accessible main entry, and then those changes we've just gone through on the rear and the top of the building, which we feel are very modest. So that is our proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Okay, not seeing any questions at this time. We'll turn to Lisa and see if we have any public testimony.
Yes, nobody signed up to speak. And if somebody does want to speak on this issue, you can raise your hand. But I don't think we have anybody that will be testifying in this.
Okay, and Rich, do we have any written testimony?
Yes, 1 second as I pull it up. I apologize. Manhattan Community Board 5 recommended approval of the application.
Okay, thank you. All right, any final questions, commissioners? Okay, not seeing any questions. I think we can move to our discussion. So I'm starting to unmute everybody. You may have to accept it. And Commissioner Shamir Baran, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Holford Smith, would you second that?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so why don't we start our discussion on this one? Commissioner Bland, would you like to start this one?
Sure. I guess I've walked or driven by this building a million times, but I never really focused on it. And its history as only half of what it used to be was very interesting, as Bill Higgins' stories about these buildings that he represents and clients he represents always is. I think this is a really wonderful proposal, actually, to take a building which I guess was residential. I'm not sure what the actual use designation was, but irrelevant now, and make it viable today as an office building, keeping intact the double height spaces, which are so prominent on the exterior, and then of course on the interior. So it keeps all of that, and it I don't think we could call this an adaptive reuse, but nonetheless, it's an admirable way of keeping the original intent intact. It also, I think, quite successfully organizes the lower level, particularly the entrance, now barrier free. I don't know what of the rear. I guess all of the rear is really subject to or subject to our thoughts, particularly that is visible, which is infinitesimally visible from 56th Street. But I think all of that was done very smartly to keep this building kind of relevant for the future, and as it has been for so many years in the past. So I really support the whole thing as presented.
Great. And Commissioner Lutfi?
I agree with Fred. I think it's a very good and very appropriate project. Everything has been done with care and precision, and it's very understated. So again, the removal of the ramp, the entrance. I really like the shifting of the mass in the back, and it is less visible. I appreciate the desire to have some kind of open space, especially in this environment. I can't stop thinking about, being able to get air in or go outside of buildings. And it does recall, the past in that regard. And that's it.
Okay, Commissioner Jefferson.
Oh, I thought it's a well thought through presentation, and I think it's appropriate.
Okay, and Commissioner Gustafson,
Yeah, same here. No issues.
Commissioner Shamir Baran,
I'm in agreement. I think that this is very appropriate.
okay, Commissioner Holford Smith,
I agree. It is very appropriate and it's a very, very good application.
Chapin,
Yes, I agree with the other commissioners completely.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Agreed.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Well done.
and Commissioner Chen.
Likewise, yeah.
Okay, so I think we all agree this is a very nicely done presentation. The entrance is restorative in its approach and will provide for barrier-free access in a very sensitive way. And the changes at the back are very modest and don't overall detract from the character of this building. So, Commissioner Lutfi, would you read this motion?
Sure. In the matter of LPC 20-10880, 140 West 57th Street, 140 West 57th Street Studio Building, individual landmark. A neo-Renaissance style studio building designed by Pollard and Steinem and built in 1907-08. The application is to alter the courtyard and rear facades, install balconies, create at-grade barrier-free access, and replace doors. I recommend approval, finding that the work will not damage any significant features of the building, that lowering the entrance to grade and removing the existing modern barrier-free access ramp, modern glass entrance door assembly, and one stone step will allow for barrier-free access for the building in the least obtrusive manner possible. That the design of the entrance door assembly, featuring a single light transom and paneled wood and glass doors, is based on the entrance infill design at the adjacent sister building and will bring this entrance closer to its historic appearance. That the expansion of masonry openings at the top floor of the rear facades will not alter the secondary utilitarian character of the facade. That the simple design and metal materials of the balconies will recall utilitarian fire escapes to be removed. That the infilling of the eastern courtyard and the construction of an addition at the roof of the rear extension will not substantially alter the massing of the building. That the brick cladding of the infill and addition will match the existing masonry, resulting in a uniform appearance at these plain secondary facades. That only a portion of the work at the rear facades will be visible from a limited location at an oblique angle from West 56th Street, and that the work will not diminish special architectural and historic character of this individual landmark.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, Rich, will you call the vote?
Yes. Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen, Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson, Commissioner Jefferson.
But
There you are. Can you repeat? Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, 11 in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Approved, thank you. And we'll move to the next item.
Thank you very much, commissioners.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is number 5, LPC 20-10397, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1293, Lot 26, 595 Madison Avenue, aka 41 East 57th Street, the Fuller Building individual and interior landmark. An Art Deco style lobby interior designed by Walker and Gillette and built in 1928 to 29. The application is to replace a door.
And while
applicants
we wait for the applicants, I just want to note for the record that Commissioner Bland is recused from this item and has left the meeting.
You may begin. State your name for the record.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Hi, my name is Simon on behalf of Spectre Group here, representing the landlord Renato Realty Trust. The project that we're going to discuss here today is at the Fuller Building, as discussed, and it is a door replacement for a to comply with code and for ADA barrier compliance. The project is located at 595 Madison. It's on the corner of 57th Street and Madison Avenue, as shown on the plan. Here's the existing building as it is today. It's obviously a skyscraper, and we are not doing anything as it relates to work on the exterior of the project. We're only working on the actual interior of the space. So what we're looking to do here today is to replace a door. A little bit of a backstory. The previous tenant that occupied the retail space on the right occupied the entire space where my hand is showing. Since then, that space has been vacant, and the landlord has been looking to lease the space, in which it is now currently subdivided into 3 spaces, which the middle one is currently being leased and kind of in construction for landlord delivery for the new tenant to take over the space. As part of this project for the landlord, we now need to comply with egress and ADA compliance. The current layout as it stands today, does not meet those those code and egress compliance. And what we're looking to do is take the existing back door, which is currently swinging into the space, and now swing it out and change it from a double door to a single door. We've kind of looked at this many ways. And what we looked to do, the reason for the swing of the doors obviously is for egress. Prior to the space, this had the right amount of egress with the doors in the front, where that double set of doors did not require to be swinging in a certain way. With the new subdivision, it now needs to be swinging out into the lobby as a secondary means of egress. Furthermore, we looked at looking into just swinging the double doors out, which is not something that we could do per code for ADA compliance, and just a conflict of what's existing in their space right now. The current double doors, which we'll get into, are only 2'6", which does not meet the ADA compliance for a ADA door. And where my hand shows it right now, if it were to be a double door, the stairwell B, when in an emergency or an evacuation, would swing out and actually conflict and hit the second door that's there today. So with this application, we're looking to swing at the door for compliance, avoid any issues with the door swinging and hitting one another, and just being very mindful. I think our application here, we're just trying to minimize the amount of work that's being done to these doors. We're being very respectful of the historical landmarks of it, but we're, obviously we're trying to comply with code and egress barrier-free compliance. So this is the doors as it stands in the elevator lobby today. As I said, these are double doors and they currently swing into the space. Here is another picture, close-up shot of it. And then here to the right is the door as it is on the retail tenant side. And then a couple of these images here are just the, some of the details of that particular door as it is today. So just to kind of give you guys a side-by-side comparison of what the door is today and what we're looking to do as a solution to the current situation. So as discussed, the existing doors are 5 foot wide, so they are 2'6" apiece. And what we're proposing is to make it now a 1 foot, an ADA compliant 3 foot door with some side lights in its place. What we're also, obviously, as we stated, we're very mindful of the existing architecture and the landmarks. We're minimizing the amount of impact that it has to the actual entire door and transom. So our goal here is not to touch the transom at all. The existing frame will not be touched as well. And also, what we're looking to do here is obviously, let's see, I think I lost.
I think we lost you for just a minute if you want to repeat your last statement.
Oh, I actually lost the screen. Okay, all right, there we go. Sorry, guys. So let's go back. Okay, again, I apologize for that. So I think I said we were really minimizing the work that's out here. We are obviously very mindful of the existing architecture, and we're going to utilize any existing door hardware components that we can today. And also one thing to know, we are, due to the weight of the door, there is also the issue of being that it's brass. So we're matching everything brass to the existing elevator lobby. It is a little bit heavier, and for ADA compliance, we will need to add a door actuator to it, which we will be installing into the new installation. We were thinking that we were not going to impact any of the existing surround marble walls, or any of the floor marble at all. So there's no actual impact to the surrounding, as as I stated. So here, just to kind of, really quickly, we're utilizing every single piece of hardware that we can, and any detail that needs to be replaced will be matched in kind to the exact detail. So, oh, I'm sorry, one other thing, just so that you're aware, because we're also changing the swing of the door, the hardware had to be swung and replaced. So as what used to be on the pull side will now be on the pull side on the other side, and then whatever's on the push side will obviously also be on that. Just being mindful, obviously, of the way the door actually functions, and again, utilizing anything that we can today. Here, just some visual impacts of the rest of the elevator lobbies as it is today. We're not doing any work to these, but just to kind of give you a sense of what's actually there today. These are kind of the existing doors that are, as you enter into the 57th Street side, these doors will actually be the same width as the new door, and they will match exactly to this detail. This view here, the PH5, these are the doors on the Madison side. Again, they match what's there today. The stairway C and the electric closet and the elevator door and the stairway B door, which is what we were talking about before, those are more kind of, I guess, pronounced doors that, again, we're not touching. They don't exactly match what's there today. I mean, other than the finish, but all those intricate details here, we would match any detail that's on the new doors that we're proposing in kind exactly to it. And here, just to kind of, it's just some elevations and plans of the actual door and scope of work. This is the push button, very slim in profile, although it doesn't look like it in actual elevation, but it is only 1 3/4 of an inch. We have consulted with our door automation consultant, and this will fit into the frame of the door of the side light. So as, again, to minimize any impact to its surrounding architecture. And then the door release of the mechanism will be recessed and hidden into the existing header above. You won't see it. It's not something that, its main function here is obviously just to open the door. This door will, really only be at this point utilized for egress. It's not meant to be access into the retail space. And thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Commissioners, do we have any questions at this time? No, okay. I just had one quick question. You are doing this, and I understand the need to have the 3-foot door, but you are doing it with 2 side lights. Did you look at a single side lighted 3-foot door and then a sort of 20-inch side light, and did that look less sympathetic in your view?
So I think with what we're looking to do, the previous layout was symmetrical. With this particular layout, we're still keeping that symmetry. And I think aesthetically, it's more in rhythm of what's there today, with 2 equal side lights and now a single door, which will look visually, symmetrical.
Okay, thanks. All right. Commissioners, any questions? Not seeing any hands. So Lisa, let's see if we have anyone here to speak. If you are here to speak and on this item, please raise your hand so we can identify you. Lisa?
Yeah, the only person that signed up to speak is Kelly Carroll. And Kelly, I brought you in.
Kelly Carroll for Historic Districts Council. Applications for modifications to interior landmarks are challenging. Commissioners nor the public can retrieve an instant 3-dimensional view of landmarked interior spaces. Thus, one must rely either on memory of one of these protected spaces or, in most cases, the application materials as a visual guide. In this case, the interior documentation and rationale for a door alteration is entirely clear. We find the work exceptionally sensitive and believe it will be hardly noticeable within the individual landmark. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And don't see anybody else with their hand raised, so I think that's it.
Thanks. And Rich, do we have any written testimony?
Yes, we have a resolution from Community Board 5 recommending denial of the application.
Okay, thanks. All right. Would you, I'm going to turn back to the applicant now. Would you like to talk a little bit about the community board and what some of the issues were that were raised there?
I think for some of the community board members, respectfully, we're looking at it as the landlord doing this for money, and I think the landlord has every right to demise the space within the space. It is a commercial retail building, and unfortunately, if they could lease the whole space, which I'm sure that they would prefer, rather than looking to subdivide it, especially in this COVID culture, that they're happy to get any tenant that will take a space. And unfortunately, they don't want to do this door any more than we do. And unfortunately, this is just a result of us trying to comply with code and being ADA and being very mindful of ADA compliance. And again, we're trying to do the least amount of work to impact the visual aesthetic of the lobby as it is today.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any final questions? All right, not seeing any. I'm going to unmute everybody so we can close the hearing. And Commissioner Gustafson, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Lutfi, would you second that?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. And we understand that this is a code-related and required change, and the proposal is to change the configuration from a double door to a single door with side lights matching all of the details and hardware. So Commissioner Goldblum, would you like to start this discussion?
Sure. I find this thoroughly uncontroversial and totally appropriate.
Okay. And Commissioner Chapin?
I think that it is, well done, and they're preserving whatever they can, and I can approve it.
Commissioner Holford Smith?
I agree. It's a very, very, very well done application. I think keeping the single door preserves the symmetry and was the right decision.
Commissioner Gustafson?
It's necessary and it's being done in the least intrusive way possible. I'm fine with it.
Okay, Commissioner Jefferson?
Oh, just another carefully thought through, acceptable.
Commissioner Lutfi. Thank you, Commissioner Lutfi.
Agree. It's a very well done project, and it's the result of the changing commercial retail market in New York, that spaces have to be subdivided because there are smaller tenancies, if any, out there.
Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, nicely done, thoughtfully done, and increases accessibility. I agree with the symmetry design.
Okay, and Commissioner Devonshire?
Appropriate.
Commissioner Goldblum, did you want to add something else?
They should salvage the doors and keep them on site.
Yeah.
Okay,
and I didn't get a chance.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm in agreement too, and would like to request that they salvage the doors.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, Commissioner Goldblum, would you read that motion?
Okay. Hold on a sec. Find it. There we go. Okay. Regarding 595 Madison Avenue, also known as 41 East 57th Street, the Fuller Building, an individual interior landmark. The application is to replace a door. I note that the change to the door swing and configuration is necessary to facilitate barrier-free access and emergency egress from the recently subdivided first floor tenant spaces, and I recommend approval. Finding that although the historic pair of doors will be removed and salvaged, the door frame closer and one of the door pulls will be salvaged and reused, and thereby reducing the loss of historic fabric, that the new door assembly featuring a bronze and glass door flanked by sidelights will match the materials and details of the historic door and is consistent with the configuration and operation of other doors present in the designated lobby space. The small push plate actuator will be installed on the new door frame and finished to match it, and therefore will not call undue attention to itself or cause damage to the historic fabric, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the Fuller Building interior landmark.
Sarah, you're on mute.
Thank you, Rich. Commissioner Shamir Baron, would you second that motion?
Second.
Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland. Oh, I'm sorry, he's not on this one. I apologize.
He's recused.
Yes, Commissioner Shamir Baron.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
And Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, with 10 in favor and none opposed, the motion carries.
That's approved. Thank you very much and good luck. And we'll move to our next and final item of the day.
Yes, and that is item number 6, LPC 20-10444, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1129, Lot 29. 170 Central Park West, the New York Historical Society individual landmark, also in the Upper West Side Central Park West Historic District. A Roman eclectic style museum and library building designed by York and Sawyer and built in 1903 to 1908, with wings added in 1937 to 38 by Walker and Gillette. The application is to establish a master plan governing the future installation of windows.
And the applicants have joined the hearing. Please state your name for the record and you may begin. Just a reminder to click the screen to activate the presentation. Thank you.
I'm Scott Duno with PBDW Architects. I will be joined later by Margie Hoffer, who is the museum director at the New York Historical Society. So we have prepared a window master plan for the building. The building is at Central Park West and 77th Street. The center portion is the 1908 York and Sawyer building. It was in 1938 that the north and south wings were added, designed by Walker and Gillette. So there are 3 primary facades: Central Park West, 77th Street, 76th Street, and there's a secondary facade facing west over a rear lot that has windows in it. There are also additional windows to the left around the corner there on the building as well. So we've been talking with the Historical Society for quite a long time about their windows, and the impetus for this master plan was an event in January of 2018 when it was 5 degrees outside, and you combine that with 50% humidity in a museum environment and the windows that are currently in the building, it created condensation running down the gallery walls. In certain locations in front of windows, gallery walls have been built so that they can expand their exhibition space. So this condensation created a bit of a condition where artworks were quickly removed from the walls before anything could be damaged. And Margie Hofer will be talking about that a bit more at the end of the presentation. So in reaction to that, working with Landmarks, we came and we put some temporary exterior storm windows on those gallery windows until we could define what the final approach to the windows would be. So that condensation in the galleries was kind of the impetus to do this project, but really most of the windows are not in galleries. They're in offices, they're in conservation areas, they're in the prints and photographs collection, for instance. And the real issue is that the windows are single glazed, they are bronze framed without a thermal break. So in the winter, again, because of the 50% humidity, there's condensation. You can see ice on the windows here. You can see puddling of water at the base of the windows. There are also mechanical issues due to oxidation on the windows. There are issues with the hardware that has been damaged over the years. Frames have shifted and gaps have appeared in the windows. Over the years, there have been 3 campaigns of putting interior storm windows in place, none of which have been successful. You can see on the right, there's puddling of water, even with the storm window in place. There's condensation, there's damage to the interior finishes, there's damage to the finishes between the exterior window and the interior storms, as well as mold growing on the surfaces. So the windows we're talking about on Central Park West are the two large windows on the end, the four windows at the first floor flanking the main entrance. On 77th Street, it's the upper double height windows. They serve the second and third floors. The first floor windows were replaced in bronze about 12 years ago as part of a renovation project. Those were done in bronze primarily because of their immediacy to the pedestrian traffic along the street. On 76th Street, we have the upper windows again. The lower windows are the ones that have the temporary storm windows. There are windows over the loading dock in conservation areas. And then there's a whole series of double hung windows on the secondary facade. So when we started this, our goal was to see if we could keep the existing bronze windows in place and achieve an improvement in the environment. So we looked at a number of options. One is repairing the existing windows and then adding double glazing. Number two here is replacing the sashes and the glazing. Number three is replacing the frame sashes and glazing. But then we also took a look at full replacement in bronze, in aluminum, and stainless steel. And I would say the stainless steel we quickly discounted because of finishes that the manufacturer said would have to be refinished approximately every 2 years, which is just not feasible for a nonprofit like the Historical Society. So one of the big issues with the windows, as I said, is that the existing windows do not have thermal breaks, which allows temperature to be transmitted into the interior of the building. So that was a big consideration for us. So we wanted to be able to evaluate these various options. So we engaged Vidaras to undertake technical analysis of these various options. So they evaluated the U factor, which is a measure of performance of the window. The smaller the number, the better. The heat loss reduction is self-explanatory. We looked at the lifespan of these options as well as the cost of these options. So looking at these, it quickly became apparent that in terms of its performance, aluminum was the best performing option here. We acknowledge that it has a shorter lifespan, but that is offset by a significantly lower cost for the replacement. You know, we're also interested in the impact of Local Law 97. Energy consumption is important to the Historical Society, obviously, as a nonprofit. And so they're very interested in pursuing a solution that will help with that as well. So the final recommendation we came up with was using an aluminum window with double glazing, thermally broken construction, and the surround and the mullion extrusions will match exactly what is in the windows now. We'll see some details of that coming up. We're proposing a Kynar finish that will match the first floor bronze windows and the doors also at the two entrances. So on the left are the newer bronze windows at the first floor. On the right, the temporary storms, we matched the finish of that to the windows on the left as well. And we're proposing to do the same with the replacement aluminum windows. Here's a sample of the finish. I would say that one of the important things is that the windows that we're talking about here, if they're on the first floor, they're behind grills, which minimizes their visibility. There are the 4 of them on Central Park West. The rest of the windows are either 15 feet above the sidewalk on 76th Street and 30 feet above the sidewalk on 77th Street. So looking at these options, I'm going to show you 3 of the primary window types. There are 18 in total. On the left, you see the existing sections through the windows on the right are the proposed sections. The red lines are an overlay of the existing with the proposed. So again, the surrounds and the mullions will exactly match with what is there now. There are very minor deviations in terms of the daylight calculations on these, and all of which are under a 2% difference. So these are the windows with the temporary storms on 76th Street. These are the big windows on Central Park West, which are also behind the grills and match closely the existing. And the most dominant window type are these on 76th and 77th on the upper floors. And again, we're able to achieve a good match to the existing windows. We went through all of the other window types and have similar analysis done for them as well, but they're secondary in nature, so we were not going to go through those with you today. I'd like Margie Holford, the museum director, to make some comments, if possible, please.
Okay, go ahead. I think you'll just have to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
You can hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Scott, and good afternoon, commissioners. I just wanted to say a few words about the programmatic impact of the Windows Master Plan. As Scott mentioned, many of the windows in need of replacement open onto galleries where we stage history and art exhibitions featuring our own collections and frequently objects loaned by other museums. To responsibly exhibit these works, it is critical that we maintain steady temperature and relative humidity in the galleries. That has become increasingly hard to do with the failing of the original windows, particularly when we have extremes in weather as we did in January 2018, as Scott described. With extremely cold temperatures outside, some of the gallery walls are at risk of developing condensation, which is potentially disastrous for the art. The New York Historical Society's exhibition program is essential to fulfilling our mission to engage audiences around the making and meaning of history, and to provide New Yorkers with a lively forum for discussion and debate. Without a secure building envelope and stable interior climate, we cannot present exhibitions and safely store our vast museum and library collections that document centuries of New York and American history. In short, we simply cannot fulfill our mission. As an institution dedicated to history, we are keenly aware of the historic significance of our beautiful landmark building and committed to preserving its architectural character. We believe that the aluminum windows with bronze finish recommended in the master plan will be visually indistinguishable from the bronze to passersby and are the best and most sustainable option for the New York Historical Society. So we thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you very much. And I think we do have some questions. I see Commissioner Goldblum has his hand up, so I will recognize you.
Can you just explain a little bit more about why these storms failed and why even new storms were not considered in your option, or if they were, why they were dismissed?
Probably the biggest reason is that the moisture from the exterior windows works its way through the finishes between the exterior window and the storm. You know, the initial ones I did were single glazed, which really just didn't work. The later ones were double glazed, and they still exhibited these problems.
So the moisture got into the gap between the outer window and the inner pane, and
right.
Is that not solvable in a better storm installation where you would, let's say, mask or insulate that space, a gap?
based on their experience with these windows, we don't believe that that will solve the problem for you. They still end up with condensation on both surfaces of the windows.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, and I do want to just note for the record that Commissioner Bland had to leave so he's not present and hasn't been present for this item. And Commissioner Holford Smith is recused from this item, and she also has not been present for the presentation and will not be here for the rest of the meeting. So not seeing any other questions at this time, we'll turn to public testimony. And if you're in the meeting and would like to comment on this application, please raise your hand so we can identify you. And we will start, as usual, with the people who signed up in advance. Lisa?
Okay, so the first person is Peter May. And Peter May, I'm made you a panelist. You just need to unmute yourself and turn on your camera if you choose.
Okay, can you hear me?
Great. Yes, we can. Please just state your name for the record.
Right, good afternoon. My name is Peter May, and I'm speaking today in favor of New York Historical Society's application for the window replacement master plan that you've just seen. I am both a resident of the Upper West Side. I live a block away in the San Remo, which is another landmark building, which is architecturally beautiful. But I'm also a trustee of the Historical Society and have been part of the committee that's been working on these windows, and also one of the donors who's going to supply some of the funds to replace the windows. I think the testimony that Margie and an architect have given make it very clear that we really need to shore up and replace the windows. And I believe the solution we've come up with is really going to end up with windows exactly as they look to anybody as they are today, but are going to assure the safety of our facility and of our collection. As a resident of the Upper West Side, and as I said, as a trustee, the Historical Society seeks to ensure that New Yorkers gain insight and understanding of New York's unique history, and especially that of our built environment and many landmarks. It has one of the best collections of architectural drawings of New York City, and I happen to be a personal collector of drawings similar, so I know how important it is. I'm particularly interested in ensuring that we keep that history and the landmarks for future generations. The application being considered today is a reflection of the Historical Society's commitment to maintaining the significant landmark headquarters, while also ensuring that the building can be most effectively serving the organization's mission of preserving our history, as well as all of the teaching that we do in civics to New York City school children. This window replacement master plan will ensure the curatorial integrity of the Historical Society's physical location and make sure that it's maintained. It will also ensure that the building can be compliant to Local Law 97 by decreasing energy use and heat loss from the building. The choice of material aluminum was a choice made with much thought and consideration. The Historical Society has to balance both the concerns of fidelity to the original materiality with the aforementioned need for a sensitive curatorial environment and energy use, as well as the cost responsibilities that come with running a not-for-profit organization. So for those reasons outlined, I hope the Commission will vote to grant the Historical Society's application for a certificate of appropriateness. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Next, Mark Diller. And he'll be followed by Kelly Carroll. There you go, Mark.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you for sticking out with a long day I know you've had. My name is Mark Diller. I'm the chair of Community Board 7, the community board in which the proposed project is to take place. We conducted our process and we're mindful that this is an individual landmark, and therefore we're reminded of a higher degree of scrutiny that applies in these instances. And our resolution adopted by our board by a vote of 27 to 15 with 4 abstentions and 1 person recusing was to recommend approval. We do so taking at face value a cultural institution's statement of need. Certainly the evidence that was just shown to you about the failure of the current windows and the water penetration issues are significant for any building, and certainly for a cultural institution whose collection would be potentially put at risk in that manner. And as an overarching matter, we tend to take at face value any cultural institution's belief of its programmatic needs. That's not how we approach our work. Rather, we approach our work about the best way in which those needs should be met. Here, the appearance and the configuration of the proposed substitute windows are as close as possible to the original configuration. So the real issue that is that we considered before us, and I believe is before you, is the choice of aluminum rather than the original bronze for the materials. And certainly in the best of all possible worlds, everyone would like to see the original materials used. Here, the consensus of the board was not to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. The color and the texture of the proposed substitute windows matches that to the greatest extent possible of the original material. And that's before you even allow for the possibility that use of bronze may, of a different bronze or a bronze that is available today versus a century ago, might itself have variations and fluctuations. In addition, we were mindful that many of these substitute windows are either at a significant height from the public way or were behind decorative screens, making their appearance more an issue of color than some of the other possibilities. We believe that a community board needs to take all factors into account in approaching the question of what is appropriate. Here, a museum that can't open its doors, and we can't tell you when it can open its doors, is certainly one thing that we took into account. The need to protect their exhibits and their artifacts and specimens, let alone anything that's on loan from another institution, is also something that we took very much to heart. And while generally speaking, we don't take cost into account with respect to a determination of what is or is not appropriate, the staggering difference between potentially a 5-fold or more difference in the cost of materials was part and parcel of our determination not to let the perfect be the enemy of the good in this instance. So on balance, by the vote that I quoted to you, Community Board 7 has recommended approval of this application. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mark. So we're going to have Kelly Carroll, followed by Landmark West. And again, if anybody wishes to speak, please do raise your hand. And Kelly, you can go ahead and start.
Thank you. Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council. The existing windows are a significant feature of the facade, and the Historic Districts Council is pleased to see that this important New York institution is thinking long-term by exploring a master plan for them. Visually and performance-wise, the long-term window solution for this plan should be thermally broken bronze windows. Aesthetically, bronze anodizing is not in any way a good substitution for solid bronze. Solid bronze weathers beautifully in our city's environment. Anodizing does not. Further, the current bronze windows have performed for over a century, while the proposed aluminum windows will last 1/3 of that lifetime. If a master plan for aluminum is approved today, in 30 years when those windows fail, aluminum can be chosen again without a conversation about utilizing bronze. This is an individual landmark on Central Park West, designed by a prominent firm. Bronze windows belong here for good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. And let's see, we have Landmark West next. and then followed by Trace Harris.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Sean Corsandi for Landmark West. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee often favors window master plans because they're a sign of commitment to stewardship of an underlying landmark. They yield cohesion, provide the community with certainty, and often reflect the original architectural intent. This proposal fails each metric. In the case of the New York Historical Society, the cohesion already exists. It was even reaffirmed in 2011 during a prior C of A, which sought matching bronze windows at altered openings. The cohesion is in large part because many windows exist just as York and Sawyer specified in 1903. Bronze windows have a typical lifespan of approximately a century. In the current case, some are 117 years old and counting. The polluting aluminum substitutes the applicant seeks to use instead under this proposed master plan have a typical lifespan of 30 years. This would mean 4 sets of aluminum windows, 4 times the scaffolding, and 4 instances when the masonry openings will be disturbed, opposed to 1 round if done properly in the intended original material. While the applicant argues that maintaining the bronze is cost prohibitive, it does not address the true life cycle cost, nor their years of failed maintenance exacerbated by curatorial choices that created microclimates to erode this landmark from the inside out. Without question, we live in very strange times today. Things are changing. It seems as though one of those things is the sense of longevity and commitment to perpetuity. While in 1903, the board of the Society, the oldest museum in New York, vested in our city and our past, committed to a York and Sawyer model, which has happily exceeded its predicted lifespan, today the board's foresight falls far shorter. To cite the museum's 11 founders, quote, "Without the aid of original records and authentic documents, history will be nothing more than a well-combined series of ingenious conjectures and amusing fables. What then is a cobbled monument of knockoff facsimiles? An amusing fable?" The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee urges the Commission to not codify the wrong, short-sighted choice that would all but defy the very intent of the windows master plan. Also accepting the 77th Street windows, which removes any chance of future cohesion. New York deserves the best, and for an institution charged with protecting our past, we hope they would appreciate their own. Accepting this plan would not address the microclimate concerns and only add additional hardship to the underlying masonry shell. We recommend denial of any windows master plan proposed that does not follow the original material, detail, and configuration for this individual landmark designated July 19th, 1966, 54 years ago this Saturday. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sean. And next we have Trace Harris. Okay, Trace Harris, you just have to unmute yourself and turn on your camera if you choose.
Unmute, start video, and
then if you could just state your name for the record, and then you have 3 minutes.
Okay, absolutely. My name is Trace Harris. Good afternoon. I'm speaking today on behalf of the 6 and 16 West 77th Street Corporation, which is the neighbor of the New York Historical Society. I'm speaking against the proposal by the Society. The New York Historical Society building was initially completed in 1908, as we've heard, and expanded in 1938 as the last example of Beaux-Arts architecture in the city and possibly in the country as a whole. As such, we believe the architectural integrity of the structure is well worth preserving, especially by an institution with historical in its name. So the Commission can imagine our shock and dismay when the Historical Society's architect proposed replacing most, not all, most of the original bronze windows with shabby frames made of aluminum. These new aluminum frames would need to be ripped out of the building and replaced every 30 years or so, as compared to bronze frames, which can last approximately 100 years. We do not oppose replacing the leaking windows to protect the collections. Instead, we believe brass is a more appropriate material. The replacement was necessary because of ill-planned walls, which trapped moisture and therefore threatened the Society's collections. Aluminum was proposed predominantly because of cost. Again, hardly what we would expect to be the primary determinant of any historical society, and particularly of this society with the size of endowment that the New York Historical Society enjoys. As neighbors, we implore the Landmark Preservation Commission to reject this pointless assault on a historic and important building, and instead to insist that they use the more permanent and historically appropriate material of brass. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And if anybody else would like to speak, can you please raise your hand? Okay, I don't see anybody else raising their hand. So I think with that, we have everybody that wants to speak.
Okay, thank you. And Anthony, do we have any written testimony other than letters we may have received from the speakers?
So we have 2 other letters in support, including one from the Borough President's office. And we also have 2 letters in opposition from members of the 77th Street Block Association. Everyone else who submitted written testimony has spoken.
Okay, all right, thank you. So now I'd like to turn back to the applicant team and ask if you'd like to respond to the comments we've heard. I think, in particular, many of them talked about the longevity of the materials and the weathering and appearance of them.
Yeah, we share the concern, and that's why we went through the process we went through in coming up with our recommendation. The recommendation is not based solely on cost. It's also based on the performance of the windows, which are documented in the Vidaris report. I will say that the finish that's proposed is not anodizing. It's a Kynar finish, which is a baked paint finish, which we believe is more durable than an anodized finish. And the windows will be a commercial grade window, not a residential grade, which I know many people have experience with their own apartments and aluminum replacement windows in their apartments. So the 2 very different things. I would mention that we reached out to the Met and talked to them about their windows. The Met has replaced windows on the on the ground floor facing the plaza with aluminum replacement windows. They also have a number of large bronze windows on the upper floors that open solely into galleries. And it's interesting that they've had similar issues with their windows as we have, having to redo finishes on an annual basis. Where they have storms in place, they also have damage between the storms and biological growth as well. And one of the big differences with the Met is that their windows are fixed windows. They were never operable windows like ours are, which is in part one of the problems that we're dealing with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any final questions? Okay, so not seeing any questions from commissioners. I think we should move to our discussion, and please check your devices. I'm requesting to unmute everybody at this point. And Commissioner Jefferson, will you make a motion to close the hearing?
So motion.
All right, and Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, thanks. And Commissioner Goldblum, would you like to start this discussion?
We need to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. All in favor of closing the hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and have our discussion now. Commissioner Goldblum.
Well, the question really boils down to a technical one. For me, we all the time authorize replacement of windows. Here, however, you have what certainly would be considered distinctive windows from a significant architectural material that are being proposed to be changed. there's clearly no issue with the profiles. They're certainly close enough. My only concern is the loss of historic material. And if I could be assured that a storm window system properly installed wouldn't work, I could accept them as applied for. I don't think there will be an issue with appearance, profiles, anything of that nature. But I mean, the loss of that quantity of historic material on architecturally distinctive windows is something that I think we should be super cautious about. And I guess I would ask the staff to work with them to figure out if that's the only alternative. I guess in my lack of knowledge and experience about window systems of this kind, I would have assumed that an insulated window unit with some kind of sleeve protecting the gap between the existing window and the inner window would be sufficient to address the concerns stated. But I would not put myself forth as an expert to say categorically that what they have proposed is inadequate. I would yield to others who know better than me.
Right, and I think it's a technical question about the condensation and the effect that has on the historic windows, but also the collection inside.
Well, it's not that. I don't deny that. It's clear that the condensation is getting into the single glazed windows and will continue to do so. And let's say that you put a proper double glazed, triple glazed storm inside, set in by 3 inches, 6 inches, whatever is required. The issue that he cited a couple of times is that the moisture gets into that gap, that 3 to 6 inch gap, and wrecks the plaster, wrecks the floor, leaks under. And it seems to me like that's something that would be amenable to a technical fix of some kind or other. But again, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and then if this is the best or only solution, then so be it. But I think it has to be done with extreme caution.
Okay, all right, Commissioner Devonshire.
Thank you, Sarah. First off, because it's an individual landmark, I think it's necessary to look at it from a completely different perspective than any other sort of building. From a technical standpoint, the image that was shown that showed the bubbling paint on the jamb, it appeared to me that in that image there was at least a 6, possibly even more inch space between the interior storm and the outer window, which is much too much for an appropriate installation of interior storms. And I don't know if there were tests done to ensure that that was correct, but I know that the standard is much less of an amount of space between the two sets of windows. And so an investigation into changing the position or even installing new ones and installing new interior storms correctly might alleviate the problem. The other, again, further to what Michael was saying, another possibility, of course, that were we approaching this, I would say investigate the installation of weeps on the exterior window, at the base of the exterior window. So if condensate forms at the bottom on the sill, it has a place to escape. It doesn't get sucked up into the plaster through capillary action. So, and again, to me, I mean, fundamental Secretary of the Interior standards says to me that if I'm replacing bronze, I'm replacing it with in-kind material. I'm replacing it with bronze, but I'm not sure that even, I think fundamentally a new interior storm system should be investigated before we completely demolish the exterior original windows and destroy the integrity of this building. And so as presented, I can't accept the application.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chen?
I pay deference to what Mark Diller from Community Board 7 said. I think seems like the community board pay a lot of attention. As we all know, they're very conscientious. They have done a lot of due diligent work. So in this case, I will defer to their judgment.
Okay, Commissioner Lutfi.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on this, actually. As a nonprofit institution, I'm very sympathetic to, you know, these kinds of financial investments and, you know, the impact that they have on an institution, especially during this time when an institution is shuttered. And so I guess, you know, I would like to be completely sympathetic to this, to their application because of that. However, this is a landmark building, and this is the New York Historical Society. And I'm not a window expert, but there is a lot of bronze fabric on this building that it just doesn't sit right with me that it would disappear. And it's going to disappear forever. It's not as though we're going to say, okay, well, right now you can install these aluminum windows for the next 30 years, and then you have to reinstall the bronze. That's never going to happen. I know it's a sizable investment, but I think it's really important to the integrity of this building. And it's in keeping in many ways with what the organization is all about. So at this particular moment, I guess I feel like they need to do more investigation, and that Michael Devonshire pointed out an area that they should be looking into that I would support. So right now, I don't think I could approve this application. I also want to say Skyline makes a good window, a good aluminum window, but an aluminum window is an aluminum window. And it is in no way of the same caliber to what they have now. And I do also feel that when you make a big investment in the quality window that they currently have, which is now in need of replacement, they're going to get the payoff with a long-term wear. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jefferson.
Like everybody else, I'm conflicted, but I'm leaning to the side of Commissioner Devonshire. I think some more exploration is required, and I feel strongly that removal of this historic fabric would be painful for me. So I lead towards more exploration, some technical way of handling it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gustafson.
Yeah, I also agree with Commissioner Devonshire.
Commissioner Shamir Barron.
I feel it would be a tremendous loss to replace these bronze windows with aluminum windows. I think they need to be bronze, but I do agree that there is a chance that this could occur again if a storm system is not investigated, so that has to happen. But I want to say that there's something at heart that's kind of strange and disingenuous. You know, people especially who collect original documents, original drawings, recognize that there's a difference between an original drawing and a facsimile drawing. They don't collect facsimile drawings. They don't collect Xerox copies of a charcoal drawing or an ink drawing. They collect the ink drawing with the date and the signature that locates its provenance. So, and for that they pay a premium. And so I just don't understand why all of a sudden there is this leap, especially in this institution for, you know, clearly there are always budgetary concerns, but in this case, when there is so much real, authentic, and important material, to replace it with something that is clearly not in the same league is inappropriate.
Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, in this case with an individual landmark, obviously we are all concerned about the loss of original fabric. And the applicant stated that it was not just cost they were concerned about, but the technical analysis with U factor and the heat loss. But I always do look to Commissioner Devonshire and also Commissioner Goldblum on some of these issues with regard to historic windows. And I do feel that we don't have sufficient analysis as to any possible alternative to try to save these windows to still achieve the concerns that the society has about water intrusion and how to best replace the windows. So I don't have the confidence level at this point that we've looked at that there's been a thorough enough analysis of what if there's a way to preserve the bronze windows and still achieve what they're trying to achieve. So I can't approve it at this point as presented without being confident that that's been done.
Okay, all right, thank you. So, and thank you all for comments. So I think where we are is we won't take an action today. And what I think we would, before we're comfortable approving any replacement, and I think some may not be comfortable with replacement with anything but bronze, but some are open to it pending more investigation and real analysis to convince the commission that a different approach that would either maintain the bronze or do new bronze windows with potentially correctly installed storms wouldn't work. So I think pending that additional analysis, we're not in a position to take an action today. So we'll ask you to continue to talk with the staff as you work through that, and we'll have you back as quickly as we can. And with that, we've concluded our day. So I want to thank everybody for their long hours today and their participation. Thank you to the applicants who came and presented, and to all the members of the public who participated, and to you all commissioners for your hard work and thoughtful comments today. And that's the conclusion of our hearing today.
Thank you,
Take
Sarah.
care.
Thank you,
Thank you. Yeah.
Sarah, and thank you, staff.